Okay, go right ahead.
All right, do we have any, let's see, attendees? I only see one, but maybe a few more will show. There's some more coming in with a number. The one coming in with a phone number, is there any chance that could be Kirsten? Okay, it's 9:03, so I'm calling our monthly board meeting to order. The first item is approval of our agenda. Today is an historic day, and a request has been made to modify the agenda to include a break to allow us to watch the swearing-in ceremony and the inaugural address. For that to happen, during the approval of the agenda, I would need a motion to amend the agenda to include that. So that is how that's going to happen. So at this point, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, and then we can discuss any changes to the agenda?
I'll move to approve, but I do have changes I want to make.
All right, there's a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Tim moved and Joe seconded it. Now is the discussion of the agenda. Tim, go ahead.
So I suggest two changes to the agenda. One is a break, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what time, around 10 a.m. maybe?
It would be 10 a.m. and maybe if somebody is, or maybe even I can be watching as well to see if that's when it occurred, but that's when it's scheduled.
To watch the inaugural swearing in and address. And then another change would be that, let's see, under item 5D, District 4 ESC member nomination and possible appointment, I suggest we strike that. We don't have that ready for this month. We will take that up in February instead.
All right, that's easy to do. Are there any other suggestions for changes to the agenda? All those who are in favor of approving this agenda with the change as mentioned, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
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 Those who oppose, please unmute and let me know. Any abstentions? Okay, so we have an agenda in place now. The first item on that agenda then would be member comments and concerns. We have 7 attendees out there. Any of you attendees who would wish to speak to us at this time, please notify. I think there's a way you can raise your hand, and then Drew will move you over so that we can hear what you have to say. So please, any attendees, do that. Okay, I do see some hands going up. So Drew, if you could pick those in the order that you choose.
Hey, Deborah Schisler.
Good morning, directors. I'm Deborah Schisler, District 2. Some members have expressed concern about EMFs and wireless. I want to address the reality of what is planned for our area in the next few years. If you've been watching, the telecoms have been moving quickly, especially during the pandemic. The hasty and untested deployment of 5G small cells are coming to our area. Sales of cell phones have been down consistently for around 3 years. Every 10 years, they need a new generation in order to sell more phones. That is the bottom line. It's about money, control, and profit. It basically boils down to advertising. This is the main function of the network, delivering ads to you, targeting you, collecting all the data they can on you. That's 5G. However, there are more concerns. The frequency range of 5G is new with unknown characteristics, way up into the 20 to 30 gigahertz range, so much higher than the present frequencies used down around 1 gigahertz. There will be shorter range, a few 100 feet apart instead of the 3 to 5 mile range. To function fully, it will need to be wedded with 4G in a way, in a way that is not keeping with early generations. Due to the short range, they will need many more towers and cell sites, as close as 100 feet or less, and will basically saturate the entire environment with millimeter frequencies in order to get adequate coverage, sadly utilizing 10 times the energy of fiber. 5G is unsustainable. Imagine antennas every few hundred feet. If they had to foot the bill, they couldn't afford to license all these additional sites. So they quickly passed House Bill 171193 without the full knowledge of its contents in order to preempt local regulations. The industry needed access to public rights of way in order to place the small cells on every lamppost in any zone. This puts them in the driver's seat to upgrade to 5G without public notice and little input from the community and local governments, capping fees paid to communities, with taxpayers basically subsidizing the industry. The health effects of 5G are completely unknown, a massive experiment on a huge population. This will drastically change the landscape and lives of people in our area. However, there is another way: fiber. Check the MuniWorks map. You can witness for yourself the movement that's underway in cities and towns across America and Colorado. They are building out a fiber network. The last year has forced us to look at and take action in closing the digital divide. We need equal access for all. With so many in Durango working from home, accessing doctors via telemed, remote learning, and small upstart businesses, it's clear fiber can easily meet these needs and open the door to a future of energy and communication possibilities. Please make LPEA part of that future. I thank you.
Okay, Deborah, thank you. It took me a while to figure out where you're going with that, but I got it now. There's a concern about EMF, and so if we had more fiber, there might be less of that. So we appreciate your comment. Okay, Drew.
Not seeing any other hands at this time. Oh, here's one.
Yeah, I've seen Nancy's hand pop up and down, so there may be something funny going on. So see if you can bring her across and she may have something to say.
Okay, Nancy, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nancy, we've got you. Did you want to address us?
Yes, I've been raising my hand for a while here. Okay, thank you. Nancy Vandover, District 4. Good morning, directors. I hope some of you were able to hear Dr. Sheckley's presentation to the Broadband Committee last week on strategic goals, fiber broadband for the LPEA community. Dr. Sheckley lives in Colorado, but he's an international expert on this and is willing to assist us down here. A quote from his manuscript, Reinventing Wires. The internet has become one of the defining technologies of our society. It is our central medium for commerce and communication, and more importantly, for our public discourse, engagement, and democratic governance. However, it has been hijacked by the commercial motivations that have come to redefine and constrain the availability, quality, and content of high-speed access in the United States. Hundreds of REAs around the country, many in Colorado, are successfully providing fiber to their members. If you have never seen the website muninetworks.org, please take a look at the map accessed on their homepage. Read the testimonials of the customers who are very pleased. REAs are in the best position to provide this utility, just like they have electricity, because of the existing infrastructure and rights of way. Our co-op should not give this up to the private companies for many reasons. If our co-op is investing for the future, then we must have fiber. Dr. Sheckley names 13 reasons why it's superior to wireless, and I'll send those to you in an email. The primary reasons for LPEA as an electric co-op to provide fiber are in his talking points: recurring revenue stream, grid management, sustainable energy and community resilience for a local solar and EMA metering system that can only be connected by fiber, which truly can help conserve energy within buildings and neighborhood grids. A trial project similar to this is being done in Basalt, Colorado now by Holy Cross. Only LPEA is in a position to fully manage its territory and keep wireless as an adjunct service because wireless is an energy hog. It uses more than 10 times the energy of wires. It's important to stay ahead of cellular deployment. If LPEA doesn't put in fiber and wireless is used extensively instead, it will defeat our sustainability goals as well as lose out on all the other future options. In the recent Irregulator case, $1.5 trillion was won back for the states to use for fiber to the premises that was fraudulently diverted to 5G development by many telecom companies. In Colorado, CenturyLink took more than $2 billion from customers from 2015 through 19. Each state has to get their share of the money. Our governor and AG should get that for us if the Colorado REAs press. So I ask you to contact the other Colorado REAs as soon as possible with the idea. If you will band together, I'm sure we can have the funds to build. There are a number of us who are deeply committed to help with a public campaign to promote LPEA fiber. I thank you very much and ask if you have any questions for me.
Okay, are there any specific questions for them? We don't normally do that in a way, go have a back and forth thing. I don't see any hands up. So Nancy, thank you for the comments. Are there any other of the participants who wish to speak to the board at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Appreciate the comments and appreciate those who are attending this Zoom. I did see one hand popping up from the phone number that ends in 1047. Go ahead. Phone number 1047. Drew has made you available to speak. Let's see if we can hear you.
If you're muted, you might want to.
I'm sorry, that is Kirsten's phone number. I did cross-reference it.
Okay. Kirsten, it looks like you're there from originally as a participant, but now moved over, but we haven't heard you speak yet. Are you able to? I hope that you can hear us. We'll continue on with the meeting and maybe you'll get that figured out. Sorry about your low bandwidth connectivity. The two people we had speaking so far, we're certainly trying to help you out by getting fiber to the home. If you ever had that, I'm sure you'd be a lot happier. Okay, let's go on then to the next part of the meeting, which should be the consent board items. Our minutes are on page 78. So if you need a moment to take a look at those, hopefully you already have, and then we'll see if there's any correction to those. So let's go ahead and see if somebody would make a motion to approve the minutes, and then we'll take care of the other items after that.
I will move to approve the consent board items. This is Kohler. And I will
Kohler, we'll just do the minutes first, and then we'll hit the others since they're separated.
Okay, then I do have some changes for the minutes.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the minutes, and we'll discuss the changes. If there is a second for that.
Rachel seconds.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kohler and a second. Is there any discussion? Kohler, go ahead.
So on page 1, and I would appreciate if we could get the page numbers back on the minutes. It helps me. Anyway, on page 1, John Lee is not listed as attending the meeting. I do believe that John was there. Then down underneath guests, we have Betsy Romero. It's not Romero. It should be R-O-M-E-R-E. And on page 3, under the annual meeting, and this is confusing every year, we have now 2021 annual meeting. I believe it's really supposed to be the 2020 annual meeting, but that gets really confusing. And I would suggest maybe we think about the LPEA annual meeting instead of a date, or maybe the 80th, whatever one it is, just for everybody's consideration. A little lower under resolution 2020-15 in the motion, President Bassett is misspelled, should have 2 T's. And then in the next resolution, 2020-18, the motion, Director McInnes, it should be IS instead of ES.
another misspelling, and then in 2 more pages, and again, I don't know what page number, sorry, page number it is, as far as the minutes go. I lost my spot. Anyway, I'm messed up. But on that, again, Betsy Romero should be Romero, R-O-M-E-R-E. And that's like the second from the last page. And that's all I have.
Kohler, do you happen to have those noted in some way or a marked up document that you could send to Janelle to help her capture those?
I can. It would probably be towards the end of the meeting that I get it. But yes, I can definitely do that.
All right. And Janelle, would that be okay? Or if he sends something to you, then that would help you capture them?
Yes, that is great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll do that. Are there any other correction or discussion on the minutes?
Yeah, Brad, I got my hand up. It's Joe.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Let me see. This would be on page 82 of the iPad. On my iPad, board actions resulting from executive session. It was the addressing the motion, approving the bonus for the CEO, and only those who opposed were listed, and we voted a couple months ago to include the votes on both sides of that issue. So if we could include the 7 directors that voted in the affirmative there.
All right. Yeah,
And
Joe
in
is
the
correct.
future-
We did make that change to put down all directors and how they voted each time. So Janelle, in this case, since it was a 75 vote and everybody voted, you can just by process of elimination figure out who to add to that. Okay, Joe, go ahead. Joe, did you have any others?
I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, you're done. All right, Tim, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Joe caught one of the ones I was going to mention. And in the, at the very beginning where it lists the directors that were present, it actually does list John Lee, but it's after my name. So I think it's more of a formatting issue than a lack of the person being there. It just needs to be formatted. There are a couple other minor ones. I'll try and identify those and send them to Janelle later. So they're mostly formatting errors, basically.
Okay. Is there anything else on the minutes then? All right, Janelle will make these clean up before they're posted with those things that have been suggested. All those who approve the minutes, would you please unmute and say aye at this time?
Aye.
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 Any? All right.
Aye.
I heard Kirsten. Okay, any who don't approve, please unmute and let us know. And any abstentions? Okay, the minutes were approved unanimously. Now I'd like to go on to the other consent board items. That's accepting new members, capital credits, and monthly write-offs. Those start on page 28. So quickly jump over there and take a look. Hopefully you already had. And you can see the big list of new members coming in and capital credits to estates, and then some patronage retirements. So at this time, I would like a motion to approve those 3 consent board items.
So moved.
Moved
Kirsten.
by Kirsten. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Michael.
Second by Kohler. Is there any discussion on these consent board items? All those in favor of approving the consent board items, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
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 Any who oppose, unmute and let me know. And any abstentions? Okay, good. They were approved unanimously. Now we're going to go on to the CEO and staff reports. And the first part of those is the division dashboard. They start on page 84. So if you take a moment and jump over to page 84, which I'm doing, there we go.
And
Okay, so
Britt, is that
Jessica,
okay?
go ahead.
Is that okay if I share the screen?
Yes, you sure can.
All right, thank you.
I can put up the hand raising next to that, and I'll keep an eye if anybody's got any questions and we'll take them as they come up.
Great. Okay, so this is, as Brett said, starting on page 84. And these are our December highlights. So here are key performance indicators, as you have seen before. We're happy to report that all of them, except for one, are green checks, which is great. We're meeting all of our targets and our goals set by the board. The only thing that we are lacking on is the electric vehicle sales, but as we've stated that before, we are working effectively to try to get more charging stations in our local areas. We do have a rebate program for giving away, I think, number 2 chargers and houses, which we've done before. So we do have that all on our website as well. So if you do get questions from our members on EVs and rebates, please direct them to our rebate page. And the other great exciting thing that will be discussed, I think at the January dashboard, is our rebates for electric bikes. And as you know, we sent out an email to the board on that. So that's exciting. Any questions on that page?
Not seeing any.
Okay. So these are our December highlights. And as the board asked, and what our plan was going forward with the dashboard is to make sure that we're tying this to our operation strategic plan, which was presented to the board last month. So this is the same page that was in the operational plan that we sent the board. As you can see, this is our North Star. And so how I'm going to report on the dashboard is following the North Star. One additional thing that we did add, though, is the executive report to this. It was a slower month in December, obviously because folks were taking vacation. So most of my time was working with Dan and Carl on the power supply options that we had. And we presented that work at the FAC, which will be discussed today as well. I did have a lot of speaking roles in December. One of them was the Western Energy Institute's Women in Power mentorship program. That's mostly, it's actually Canada, all along the West Coast of the US into California, and they're picking up additional states like Nevada, Utah, Colorado is now getting more involved. And I used to be a mentor for the program when I was at my other company, and now they've asked me to be the keynote. So that was pretty exciting to talk about mentorship of women in different energy roles. What's great about Western Energy Institute, and I would encourage the board to look at their annual events, because they include investor-owned utilities, co-ops, and municipalities. So it's the only organization I know that really focuses on those 3 electric industries. And it's great where they all converge and share information and knowledge. So again, it's called the Western Energy Institute. I was also a panelist for the EUCI, and that was the Women in Power conference as well. And they asked me to also speak about mentorships and pathways of how to get over speed bumps and conflict, and how to create mentorships for women in these roles. So that was exciting on a personal level. I really enjoyed that. Any questions on that before I move on?
Jessica, this is Tim. I'm just curious, do you have an idea of how many other women CEOs there are within the co-op world and that's represented by the Western Energy Institute?
I don't believe there are any. There may be one other that I can think of, and that would be Libby Cannon. And she is my partner at the NRECA Women in Power Group. We co-chair that group, and she's a co-op CEO in Oregon. And so she is involved in the Western Energy Institute, but that is the only other co-op woman in the US I know that's involved in WEI.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so our other North Star, one of our main ones, is be safe and excellent in all we do. And so I'm gonna pass the torch on to the folks that are really the lead on these issues for each dashboard. So Nadine will take number 1 and number 2.
All right, great. So we're thrilled that we had no accidents and incidents in the month of December. And we continue to do training, and especially with snow and different things that we're facing, to keep everybody as safe as possible. We did have 2 COVID cases in the month of December. They were remote and there was no other employee exposure, so the 2 cases were not related. And what we've really found is that our plans of keeping people separate, working remotely, how we've set up the staff in the office that need to be there has been really effective in containing cases. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and doing everything we can. Our staff is doing an incredible job making this happen. Just really want to give a kudos to them working, still serving our members, doing the best they can in this environment. So just a huge kudos to our staff.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight one other great thing that Nadine and her team has done is they send out weekly notices to all employees about the cases and reminders about testing. And we've also been offered preemptive testing as well. So they've done a good job of that. And they've also done a really good job educating our staff in regards to symptoms and when to stay home. And so I've been really impressed with our employees where when they start to feel sick at all, they actually call in right away and stay at home. And that in itself has really helped limit any exposure so that we do not have an outbreak. So I just want to highlight that. It's been great work for Nadine and her staff. I'm going to go to the third one and then we can take questions overall. And then Jerry wants to talk about the safety culture, the last box.
Yeah, changing the safety culture, the numbers really speak to the change in attitude and the way that the crews are viewing safety and how they are feeding into safety as a culture. We have a very young group of foremen over here in the Durango office, and all of them are really leading by example when it comes to safety. And of course, that's our #1 priority. It's great to see.
Okay, any questions on that slide?
This is Brett, just a comment, Jerry. It's very encouraging for you to say safety is turning out well like that, particularly when you mention younger people, because having been a younger person years ago, I remember being invincible. So I'm glad to hear that you've got that working out well. We appreciate the effort.
Okay. Brett, I can't see other people's hands.
No others are up, so
okay,
go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, and then this is a continuation in the North Star, Be Safe and Excellent All We Do. And Dan's going to talk about meter reading expenses.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, we've had AMI, of course, around for a long time, but it's just now that we're getting to a point, where we can actually cancel the contracts with some of the outside meter reading companies that we have, where there's actually 2 of them, La Plata and Archuleta County, both different contracts. And we were able to stop the one for La Plata County, and I think Archuleta County is going to be close on its heels. That's happened just through additional efficiency measures and some good use of technology to efficiently route the meter readers that we do have in-house to be able to pick up these reads. It's not an easy task. The few reads that we still have left that we have to do by hand are at the far reaches of our system, but they're getting more and more efficient at that and able to save some tremendous money over just last year, $100,000 over just last year. So I thought I'd report on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I've
We
also
do have
got
a couple of questions here. The first one is by Joe Lewandowski. So Joe, go ahead.
Hip, hip. Congratulations. Thank you. Just a question, 2 questions actually. How many meters do we still have to sort of get out there and read? And then I saw in the quarterly report of, the contractor expenditures. So I'm assuming that will mainly go away, that $100,000 that we saw in 2020, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And it's been greatly reduced month over month throughout the year of 2020. It started off at $8,000 a year, went down to $2,000 a year. And there's a $2,000 a month. There's a $2,000. There's a base level that's associated with those contracts that is there regardless if they read any meters or not, is the way the contracts were set up. And so yes, those should go away, at least for La Plata County 1, or Toledo hopefully be pretty soon. And as far as a rough number of meters that we're reading each month, it's about 400 to 500 that we still read. There's some that we're just now getting changed out. Some of the holdouts, of course, are the opt-out meters that still have to read by hand on a quarterly basis, though. And the other ones were net metered time of use that actually used the control wire off the meter. That was one little gap we had in the technology that we have filled now. So we're working through those as we speak right now. We should be taking those off the list.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. So Jessica,
Okay.
go ahead.
Great. So, and Nadine's going to cover the next one, digitizing forms.
One of our initiatives in our operational plan is to really work on saving staff time and automate as much as possible. So the people and culture team are just really excited. We've been putting a lot of work into scanning our files to get them electronic, and we will be launching an HRIS system that will give us a lot of opportunity to automate processes. So we're really excited about that.
Thanks, Nadine. Yeah, I think the point too of showing these two under excellent in all we do is we have a big emphasis on continuous improvement. And that's what we've been talking to the board about through COVID, is that we really had some opportunity to look at our current processes, and most of the processes were just paper, passing paper. And so with people being at home, that was no longer realistic. And again, Nadine and her team have done a great job working with Drew and his team on how can we make these forms such that you don't have to print them out as a customer as well. We're also looking at the customer side and employees, and instead doing it all electronic and email. So that's been a great effort, and it saved money internally.
That sounds good. Rachel, you've got a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick clarifier. Definitely, it sounds like all the automation that you all are working on presently is really wise and smart. But you made a comment where automation, something like automation is kind of the focus in order to save staff time. And is that really just in these processes, or is that kind of an overarching strategy of HR, and is it countered at all with like job retention and things like that? Just don't know how big that framework is.
Yeah, so our initiative is larger, that we are looking to automate to save staff time. And then we have individual goals under that. So we're looking at one at a time. And one of this is this HRIS process. We did do some good work last year on recruiting, where we have a lot of automation in our job posting, and that feeds into our affirmative action plan. So we're taking one piece at a time and focusing. And then there's times that in real time, you can just fix it. You're like, oh, great idea, let's fix it. But we do have a plan for the year that we're going to go through each step. And this is just one of our initiatives.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Our next North Star is keep the lights on. So I will have Garrett hit the first one, please.
Good morning. I touched on this in November, but just a little recap. Pagosa Highlands is an underground cable replacement capital project that was scheduled for 2021. The cable in this subdivision is 40 years old. We've had a history of faults causing lengthy outages for 110 customers. So most of the problems were in one area in particular. So we went ahead and replaced this problem section in 2020. What's cool about this is that we were able to reroute the cable, get it off a customer's property, get it back in the green belt where it should be. We replaced transformers, ran some new secondary wire, we were able to completely miss a wetland area. So yeah, the problem section's done. Staking crews, dirt contractors knocked it out of the park. We should get another 40 years out of this easy. So it's done right. We'll get started on it again this summer. So if you all have any questions.
Thank you, Garrett.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty excited that that project was completed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who would have thought you'd get excited about cable replacement?
Well, when you're out of power so many times, right? Okay, the next one, Drew is going to talk about our upgraded VMware host.
All right, and that's something I can get excited about. So we actually have 3 of these VMware host servers, and I'll take a minute to give you some background on what that means. So the traditional model for computer services is you have one server to do one job. So you'd have a file server, a server for doing AMI, one for authentication, and so forth. With virtual servers, what we can do is we can load multiple server operating systems on a single piece of hardware. So on one box, you've got several copies of Windows Server or Linux operating system, that sort of thing. So we actually have 3 of these host servers, and what we've done is taken approximately 70 operating systems and loaded them on those 3 servers. So going from 70 down to 3, you can imagine how much that saves in terms of like space, the energy that it takes to power and cool these servers. So there's a huge advantage there. And then another advantage is that we can move our virtual servers from one of these hosts to another without having any downtime. So back to the traditional model, if you had a hardware failure, that service would be unavailable while that server's down. With virtual servers, we can just move them to another piece of hardware with no downtime. So before this upgrade, if we wanted to perform maintenance on one of our servers, we'd have to shut down some of those services because we didn't have enough horsepower to run everything. But now that we've upgraded kind of the weakest link of those servers, we can keep all those services up and running. And that gives us some extra flexibility and reliability. So that's an exciting thing in IT these days.
Drew, how long have you guys been working with VMware?
It's actually been quite a while. I'm thinking probably about 10 to 15 years now.
Okay.
And so it's, yeah, it's really worked out great. You know, like I said, it gives us a ton of flexibility and the reliability has gone way up.
One of those crazy things, but a very close college friend of mine became vice president at VMware. He did retire a couple of years ago, so I followed them for a long time. It's interesting to see it comes all the way back to LPEA. I don't see any other questions up, so
Okay.
we can go on to the next item.
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, we are happy that Drew gets excited about technology. So.
Indeed.
Okay, Jerry's going to cover the maintenance and car hit equipment.
Yeah, so the holiday season, the weather really cooperated well, and we didn't have any major outages at all. But with the holidays come good times, and some people took it too far. We had quite a bit of car hit poles, car hit transformers, street lights, J boxes. So just be careful out there. Be mindful of other drivers out there. Try to remind our guys of that when they're working. You just never know.
Okay, and I'll have the first quick thought on that. Do we ever have areas where the same pole gets hit multiple times, or is there an area that's so fraught to be hit that it would be better served putting things underground? Just a thought. I'm sure there's, maybe have information on that now, but that would be something that could happen if it was a frequently hit area.
It blows me away that you can have 300 feet in between poles and somehow when vehicles veer off the road, they miss that 300 foot and they hit the 2 foot where the pole sits.
Crazy.
You don't really see a pattern in it. when it's drunk or careless driving, a lot of times it's underground equipment that they're taking out.
Okay. Joe Lewandowski, go ahead. Joe, unmute and go ahead.
Just a question and then a comment about that. When I'm on the city planning commission and we have a lot of projects come in, and it seems that the placement of utilities boxes always seem to be kind of the last. I mean, as a planning commissioner, I don't know how to look at drawings and say, is that in the right place? Do you look at placement of these things? And the reason I'm asking is I live in a townhouse. City is encouraging more multifamily development. So a lot of things are in smaller footprints. And I've got an electrical box that's, we've put some boulders in front of it, but it's in a place that's kind of the only place we have to store snow. And I'm always a little worried about, if that's going to be hit. It hasn't been hit in all the years I've been here, but is that ever considered when you guys look at building plans about how that interfaces with, how people actually have to live?
I believe most of the locating of our equipment falls under our easement and right-of-way policies. And correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, Jessica, but I think that we are fairly limited to where we are allowed to place our equipment.
That's correct. And Joe, we are working with the planning departments. They've been helpful in sharing with us their proposed language for the locating of utilities. And so we have been supplying comments to them of saying, we would like them, further back from the road and so forth. So we are in contact with those groups when they're rewriting their plans. But yeah, we are required to place the utilities according to their policies. Okay.
Is there any way, some of these to look at, some more protective measures, a concrete pole or something in front of these spots, or is that too much of a problem?
We just never know where things are going to get hit. If we placed one in front of every box, that would be extremely expensive. And we just can't predict where somebody's going to go off the road. Some places where they have hit our poles or boxes, you would never think that a vehicle could even reach that spot, but somehow they do. High speeds and alcohol just don't mix.
Okay. Thank you. The next one is be a trusted community partner, and I'm going to hand this off to Garrett.
Okay, so the Santa Sacks is kind of a Christmas tradition we've done over here. We're not sure for how long, for about 20 years. So in a nutshell, so we all get together and we all bake cookies and bring in fruit and candy, and we load them all into these goodie bags. And we go to all the assisted living facilities in the county and we just hand them out to everyone that lives in these homes. So one of us dresses up as Santa. We bring our kids, our families, and we just go around handing all these goodies out. And it's a special thing that we do. It's a heartwarming experience. It's pretty neat to see some of these folks get so excited. They love seeing our kids, and it's just a cool thing. I think Nadine came over a couple of years ago and helped us. It was it's fun, get everyone together. But this year, unfortunately, we had to basically box them all up and set them outside. So we'll try again next year. But we did pass out 200 bags this year, so it's cool. So next year, you're all invited. Maybe Britt, you could be Santa.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was a kid growing up in La Plata County, My father was in the Lions Club and always participated in a tradition where they would do a similar thing, but go to low-income homes to deliver Santa sacks to the kids there. And he got to dress up a few times to do that, and dressed up once came to our home. That tradition was stopped for whatever reason. I don't know, a lack of interest or what, but I sure remember that distinctly as a kid, and the impact it made to have Santa come to your house.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
Great, thanks, Garrett. Yeah,
Yep.
you guys do a great job over there. And then they also have the golf fundraiser that's, I believe, in the summer. So we'll report on that if they have it this year.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is the Giving Tree and Roundup, and Ginny is going to report on those.
Yes, the Giving Tree has been really successful this year. As of December, there was over $12,000 from Durango and over $2,000.
Excuse me a minute. I do think it's time for us to take that break.
Oh, I was just getting started.
I'm sorry, but we'll come right back to this. Any who want to watch it can do a quick Google for inauguration and it'll come up. But let's go ahead and take roughly half an hour to see what's going on. And then if the speech drags on forever, we can get back started here we'll see. But try and come back over here and look no later than 10:30 to see what's up. So at this moment, I'll go ahead and declare a break, and we'll see you in a bit. Thank you. Okay, if any of you are lingering out there, we can see who we get back online here. Kirsten, you've got your video up again.
Yes, sir, I do.
I can hear you as well. Sounds good.
Good.
I see folks coming back, so a few more to go.
Brett, I think John Lee had another commitment that he had scheduled on the original break time frame. So he sent a message asking for us to let you know that he had planned a 10:45 meeting outside of LPEA and that he's likely to return late to our meeting. So just wanted to pass that along.
All right, what did he say? Is something outside of LPA? I missed that part.
Yes, he had scheduled another short meeting outside of LPEA during
Oh, okay.
original break time. So he
Mhm.
probably will not be back to this meeting for a little while.
Okay. And Rachel let me know that she's going to have to step out this afternoon as well. Interestingly enough, she is going to get her second COVID shot. We'll have to ask her about that. Her vaccination, I believe. I don't see her back on though. Okay, we're waiting for Bob, Tim, and Joe.
Hey, Garrett, who was the Santa this year for the Santa sacks?
We weren't able to do it.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have it all together. I've seen a picture of
No.
Jerry Wills, your predecessor as Santa Claus, and oh, he looked like he was having a ball. He really, I hear really great things about that program. So thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
This year, it sounds like you just delivered the sacks and left them outside of the facilities, and then they delivered them internally. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's a bummer.
Still though, I'm sure that would help a great deal for those who are kind of locked up. I know my mom and dad-in-law are in an assisted living care, and they did feel as if they were in prison for a while because they probably had to be so cautious and only being able to see people through windows and stuff. Tough time, but things are starting to improve. Joe, Tim, Bob, where are you? Well, I said no later than 10:30, so they probably thought no earlier either. Okay, we got Joe back on. Now we're waiting one of Bob and or Tim, and we'll get things started again. We still have 3 attendees out there. Well, I've certainly always been a fan of history, and sometimes it's more fun to live through it than others. But I'm glad we had the opportunity for those of us who chose to participate in that, or I should say listen in anyway.
Are we going to be done by 4 o'clock with this extended break?
You know, we might, because the agenda is just not that bad today. I don't see anything that's going to cause us to go into. Usually what takes us a long amount of times is when we have a subject, instead of taking 5 minutes on it, we argue about it for an hour or something, which is appropriate sometimes, but I don't see that today, so we might be able to make it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of snow to get plowed, so.
Yeah, my back's still aching from yesterday shoveling, but I'm certain I don't have as much as you to deal with. Okay, Bob's here, so let's go ahead and get the meeting started again. We were on page 93 of the board packet, and we had just looked, we're talking about the giving tree.
All right, thank you. So yeah, Jenny, please start again on the giving tree and roundup.
All right, so last year, I don't have the numbers on that, but we have gone over and above last year's numbers. We have 12,700 and some change from Durango, and then 2,530 from Pagosa. There were 327 hardship accounts that have received the assistance, and I'm assuming that everyone knows what the Giving Tree is, correct? This is not a new program to LPA. And then there's an average of $38 that is applied to each account. So that was really helpful for this year, especially for a lot of needy families. And then we also had, because we couldn't go into the lobby and you usually, grab a little thing and then take it out and donate. We had red envelopes at the drive-through that members could just slip some cash in and then put it in with their bill. So that was really great. And then the roundup, the customer service representatives had a little contest, and they had 238 new accounts that are signed up for roundup. And there's about $6 per member, usually an account that will be round up, and you can do more, of course, but it is that average of $6. So that's another little chunk of change going to some needy people.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm a newbie. You guys got to stump me with something.
Well, that's sure good news on the roundup. We've been kind of watching that and watching it dwindle a little bit, and knew we needed to take some positive action to see a bump. That was great. Kohler's got his hand up. So Kohler, if you'd go ahead.
I just want to compliment you for the roundup increase. That's fascinating. I really appreciate that. I also saw in the roundup report that one of our fellow directors has donated his per diem. So that's really good for the community. And thank you guys for your effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Kohler. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Oh, Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I really compliment the CSRs and that group on the roundup, as well as the Giving Tree. All of these programs are pretty phenomenal to know that how much the employees care and put back into the community. But I was curious what was the contest award, and how was that? Was there a prize for winning a contest or anything?
Yeah,
like that?
that's a good question. I think we put it in our internal newsletter, if I can.
Yeah, it was actually Jeannie Bennett offered to make a home cooked meal.
That's
for
right.
the winner, and she's a really good cook. So,
wow.
And she's got a famous carrot cake. So it was quite the event.
And was there a particular CSR that won that, or was it a group, or what?
I think it was one CSR. Jenny or Nadine will have to remind me.
Was it Sid?
I think it was Sid.
Yeah. I was trying to search for that real quick. But
Well, I would just offer my congratulations for a job.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is maintaining strong financial health, and these are to Carl.
Good morning, everybody. So we got a couple of points. I will go into more detail on the financial report when we take a look at that. But a couple of things to report this month. As you know, we had a new audit partner from BKD, replacing Rob McCoy, Tammy Totsky, who she and her team conducted the interim audit with my team, and obviously I think Jessica and Brett and a few others. Tim, I think, also spoke to the audit team. All of the work had to be done remotely. This is an interim audit, so it's more focused on our systems, our internal controls, to make sure that we are following our rules and regulations, that we are not exposing the co-op to any abnormal financial risk. And it went very smoothly. During my time as an auditor, I can't imagine doing something like this without being on the premises. So great kudos to BKD and to Monica and her team for getting us through that. And we actually have a kickoff call tomorrow with BKD for the more kind of traditional field work, where they look at our results and ensure that, you know, do the work that ends with the signed audited financial statements in March. And that is also being done remotely, but this has set a very good precedent, so I'm very encouraged that it will go smoothly. The other item I have here, it's kind of a repeat, and one I'm always pleased to report on, and this is really praise to my team, but also the CSRs and Hillary's team. The delinquent accounts were once again very low, under $5,000 at the end of December, which is the lowest they have been in 2020 or 2019. So kudos to those guys, and it's very encouraging that we're being able to work with our members to avoid people, you know, getting into a position where they're delinquent. And I would also add to that it's not because we're disconnecting people left, right, and center. There are a few disconnections, but I am most of the time I'm privy to all that process, and we usually see if someone is up for disconnect that we are able to get a plan worked out with them so that they maintain service, and that's really what we're shooting for.
Okay, Carl, Tim, go ahead.
Carl, thank you. I noticed in the write-off report that the amount was above 5,000. I was just curious, what's the reconciliation between that write-off report and the 5,000?
Yeah, that's a fair point, Tim, and it's there isn't really a correlation in the sense that when you get to the point where where these are write-offs happening, they're no longer active members. So the delinquent account refers to active membership.
All right, thank you.
Holly, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Britt. First of all, I just want to say that the staff absolutely rocks. Reading this dashboard this month was absolutely a pleasure, and it's so nice to see it so well streamlined. I wanted to also thank you for the work on the delinquent accounts. I think there was far fewer, you know, in the report this month than I've seen for a while. I really and truly appreciate your work on that. But there is one person that has been mentioned many times, and I want to give a kudos to Monica Rodriguez. And I hear her name come up fairly frequently in these meetings, at the FCC meetings and whatnot. And I really just want to thank her for her dedication and hard work. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Monica. Sincerely appreciate it.
All right, Holly, appreciate pointing those things out. Jessica, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. That is very much appreciated. Okay, this is our last slide in the dashboard before we get on to the financial report. So Dan's going to hit the first one.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce to everybody that we have entered into an agreement with a provider for a new DER platform. It's Distributed Energy Resource. It's synonymous with a lot of other names you might hear: grid management system, a DERMS system. Dominic May is going to be presenting on that here right after Carl's financial report. So I think you'll have to wait for the exciting questions until then, possibly.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, Drew has a last point.
All right, so yeah, we just recently rolled out this field worker software. Historically, our stakers had to use software that ran on Microsoft Windows. And so the best option for them was to use a ruggedized tablet. And those are kind of clunky, and the battery doesn't last real long and so forth. And so now we have a true mobile solution that we're pretty excited about. It runs on iPads, which are a lot cheaper than those ruggedized tablets. The battery lasts longer, it has built-in GPS. And so really the whole process for our staking engineers has become more streamlined. So that's pretty exciting for that group.
Yeah,
All
and I
right.
remember, geez, when I started, they were still using papers. And so it's gone from one thing to another thing to this pretty quickly. It's been quite a transition.
Yes. Yep, you're exactly right.
Okay. Thank you. So that is the end of our dashboard, and I will now kick it off to Carl to give the financial report.
And Carl, your report starts on page 3. So if everybody wants to jump there to be able to zoom in on anything if necessary. And so with that, Carl, go ahead.
Thank you, Brett. I will share my screen real quick if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, is everyone seeing that, filling their screen?
Yes.
Okay. Cognizant of us taking the break and the desire to get finished on time, I'm not going to just rush and say no questions, but I'm hopefully, as you can see from all these tick marks, we don't have a huge amount of concerns. We reported strong operating margins in December, which contributed to obviously a full year of margins being in excess of budget. As we mentioned in the Finance and Audit Committee, and I'd like to really reiterate now, that operating margin result was exclusively the result of reduced expenses. We did not achieve the operating revenue that we had budgeted. I know we have, when we've just put through a rate increase and we see substantial operating margins, there will be concerns, but I want to, the point I would make more than any is without the reductions in our operating costs, we would have reported an operating margin of negative $1.5 million. So it's very important that we maintain that momentum going into 2021, but we also have to be cognizant that we cannot run that lean forever. Training, education, all of those things were neglected, seems too strong a word, but I can't think of anything else that's as appropriate, and we need to make sure that our staff are aware of the latest developments and the best practices in our business. So all of these numbers are extraordinarily healthy. They meet all of the requirements and goals set by the board. So that's very encouraging, and this represents the full year of 2020. So moving on to just a graphical representation of that. Orange is actual, blue is budget. We had anticipated Q4 being a stronger month, as is normal with cold weather and so forth, but we exceeded that once again, mainly due to reduced expenses, or almost exclusively due to that.
Okay, hang on a minute, Carl. I'll have Sue go ahead.
All right, great, thank you. On that first sheet that you had on the summary, have we received the payment back on the PPP loan yet? And is that included in our financials this month?
We don't receive a payment because obviously we already got the money.
Right.
But we have not had formal notification that our loan has been forgiven. We anticipate we should get that very soon. There is quite a long wait time to get that. We are very, very confident indeed that that will not be a problem, and our auditors were as well. So they recommended that we did recognize that income. That is not part of the numbers that we looked at in the first slide. If I go back, where it talks about operating margins, that the 1.9 million of debt forgiveness is not included there. It is considered non-operating income.
Okay, thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, I can't see any other hands. Brett, do you see any?
There aren't any now. Go ahead.
Okay, I will move forward. So normally when we get to the highlight sheet, we have a few oranges or yellows. It's kind of halfway between the two. Everything green this month, which is very encouraging. So the top numbers refer to just December, where we were over $200,000 below forecast on our operating costs, with half of that being payroll. Delinquent accounts we've already touched on. Something that was somewhat different in December is that our electric sales were actually slightly over forecast. It was 1%, so I think it's probably more accurate to say right on forecast. So that's a great job for Dan's team to putting that together. So what you would see in normal months is that we would have reduced sales, reduced gross margins, but our expenses made up for it. December was something of an outlier in that we did achieve the sales that we anticipated, mainly because it was really cold. But the expenses stayed at the level that we've seen all this year. So we end up with operating margins that are $2 million over forecast, just slightly over $2 million. Any questions there, Britt?
Don't see any.
Thank you. Obviously, there's more details in the full report in the appendix, and if anyone sees anything, another time, just if you contact Jessica and myself, we can address that.
Okay, that full report starts on page 9, and on page 10 at the bottom is his summarized 2-paragraph conclusion, which is something that we should all read each month. Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. Carl, I was just curious where we are in terms of the increased funding for the rate stabilization fund that I think we as a board approved October, November or something. Is that, we achieved that, or is that something that we will do throughout this year?
My aim is to do that through 2021 and report back to you quarterly on where we're at. Right now, we're still at the $2 million level.
Thank you.
Okay, Holly, go ahead.
All right, I just wanted to point out on page 19 of our board packet of 141 that there are now 17 on-bill financing accounts, up 3. And so I just wanted to point that out, Kohler.
Okay, yeah, it's nice to see it go up for a little bit rather than down. I still think that's a program we can make progress in with some effort in the future and some changes. All right, and don't see anything else. So now we can then go on to the next thing, which looks like it's going to be that presentation that Dominic's going to give.
Yes, so Dan, I think, is going to kick it off. Over to Dominic.
Okay, that's on page 63 of the board packet, if you want to move over there to zoom in on it. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know Dominic May, he is our energy resource program architect. So he gets to play utility of the future day in and day out, and build these fascinating programs for us and look into the technologies that help us move forward. So he has I think it's a very exciting platform to tell you about today and its capabilities. And there's no approval necessary. This is more of a FYI for you to know some of the stuff that we're doing here. Dominic, I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thanks. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen here. And should I keep out an eye for raised hands during this?
I'll do that for you, Dominic. You can concentrate on this thing and I will interrupt you as necessary.
Great, thank you. All right, so I think Dan went ahead and introduced me. So for those of you who don't know me yet, that's pretty much who I am. To start off, I'll go ahead and kind of talk through a little bit about what distributed energy resources really are. and all the kind of things you might encounter around in the industry that reference those. So really the resource is either just a new source of load, like a smart EV charger, or a source of generation like solar with a smart inverter, and smart being kind of one of the key terms in both of those, in the sense that they can be monitored and controlled to work together. That's kind of what makes them the resource. So there are a lot of acronyms and common abuse throughout the industry for this. These are just a few that all basically refer to the exact same thing. You're going to encounter these in writing all over the place, and they tack on a few extra, kind of take your pick, but you'll see these in articles, etc. So some of the questions we're setting out to answer here in this presentation and just throughout the coming months are these questions on where we're progressing towards a utility of the future, what actual tangible progress we're making, and sort of where this all fits in that plan. And then it's specifically one of the things I'll speak to today is why we chose to start with a software as a service solution for these. So this is pretty familiar. Everybody's aware of our overarching goal that will pretty much speak to the direction we've taken for all of this. And this is where it actually fits within our 5-year plan and our operational initiatives. So this is one of those that speaks directly, I think, to beneficial electrification and utility of the future. And that being the 3 pillars of cost, reduced emissions, and benefit to the grid. So these are the key areas that we're prioritizing as a part of this. These are all present in our operational plan for grid solutions throughout 2020. And we're establishing KPIs for all of these. So we'll be measuring our progress against these goals, and we'll be able to kind of reference that. Each of these, you'll notice, have different components of that beneficial electrification. All of them have a cost component, and all of them also have a clear renewables or reduced emissions component. And then additionally, the controlled resources, and many of these also will help the grid, as we'll get into in a little more detail. All right, so these are pretty much the steps on how we're going to get there. Some of the keys to be aware of here is with situational awareness and analytics. What we're really talking about there is being able to understand what's going on in real time. So instead of having to do a data project and run queries and put it all together as a report, which is basically giving you yesterday or however long it took us to build that data, we'll be able to use for our own purposes and for dashboarding real-time collection of data. And that's prerequisite really to being able to do this kind of predictive forecasting. Right now we do rudimentary forecasting that Dan and team basically put together. It's based on historical usage, but it's not granular to the point of, for example, Holy Cross has one going on with this specific platform with a fisheye camera looking at cloud coverage to predict a solar array's drop in power. So they're doing a fairly accurate and predictive forecasting that they can then accommodate using these controlled distributed resources. So the final step there, once we've collected all the data and we're able to actually look at things in real time, all of our different resources, be it EV chargers or smart inverters, our full suite of production meters for solar throughout our territory, then we'll be able to use that data to do the forecasting. And finally, we'll use control to take advantage of that. And whether that's peak shaving or accommodating the additional solar being produced, that can take different forms. And the final form of that is the automation. So it's doing it for us to achieve goals that we've set as thresholds and parameters. So the final state, this is kind of showing ideally where LPEA here is actually the platform that is Camus in this case, that is the software provider. I'll be speaking to a little bit further, but these are all the pieces that we have to bring together to really leverage this and take advantage of it fully. There's some of these that are going to move outside of just grid solutions and sort of the engineering operational side to helping out the things like you'll notice on here, the seamless customer engagement, the ability to show people instantaneous results, and to give people these turnkey enrollments and programs. So today, for example, if you get on our EV charger program, it becomes a very quick win because it's a smart charger. You enroll it in our program, we can afford to give it to you for free. And we're avoiding enough demand that it's very advantageous for us to, it pays back on all fronts. And so creating more of these win-wins by basically tying together the intelligence to use them, so they're not just coming on arbitrarily and hitting our, and specifically our coincidental peak to tri-state of $20 a month, that's per kW. If you can avoid a 10, 12 kW Tesla hitting that routinely, adds up very quickly. So let's see. So there's a lot of potential here, but I think getting the entire picture is kind of what this is trying to emphasize is so critical. So these are manufacturers of some of the devices that some of these we leverage as resources today. We've got ChargePoint, you'll see Steffes over here in the room AC mini splits. This should really just probably say HVAC is the whole heating and cooling collection there. Steffes Connect refers to our electric thermal storage heater program, which is today by a margin the biggest resource on our system. And those are the heaters with the bank of bricks that heat up off peak and discharge on peak. Right now there's about 2,000 of those that shift 10 megawatts of load, which is non-trivial for sure. So
who is, Dominic, who is the manufacturer of those heaters on this?
It is Steffes.
Steffes, got it.
You'll see Steffes Connect actually is their newest module, which right now most of those heaters operate effectively on a timer, whether that timer is in the meter or just stuck on the unit, they're just on off on a timer. And what we're rolling out now via that same manufacturer is their smart controller, which turns these into an IoT, Internet of Things device we can control just like we do with the ChargePoint chargers, which we're also running as a program today. You'll see them on here. And many of these are just those that we'd like to add. So we're seeing more and more Tesla Powerwalls coming online here. And then things like smart inverters could be collected as well. Today, we have to go out and basically do an integration with each of these platforms. So if I want to manage the ChargePoint chargers, I log into a ChargePoint interface, an admin interface, and that's where I can schedule charging and basically do everything around that suite of resources. Same deal for Steffes Connect. And if we were to add these others, that would be the scenario, is we're basically tacking on additional resources over and over and over that each require their own administration. And that's one of the huge components of why the platform as a service is really effective. It ties all these together. We will go into a single interface and we'll be able to manage all of these. And for many of them, we'll actually be able to get more incremental control than sometimes their interfaces allow, because a lot of these manufacturers just aren't that good at software, quite frankly.
Hey, we have a question from Kohler. So Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, Dominic, you mentioned the software and what it's doing is controlling all these things, and obviously it's very beneficial. Is it also recording the benefits that are achieved for your KPI and other things so that we know where we stand?
Yeah, it's collecting a data repository of all that, and so we'll get analytics, and we'll be able to effectively disaggregate what is beneficial electrification, what specifically was off peak, what, ideally if we get this system mature, we'd be able to say, here's the excess solar that we dumped into these resources, and we'd be able to disaggregate it beyond just saying this is off peak, low demand time usage, basically. But yes, the short answer is we'll have data on all that, and that is exactly how we'll be reporting on KPIs and doing analytics on our system.
So it would be able to compare what you did as compared to what would have happened if you didn't have the software. Is that right? Can I give you a comparison?
Sorry, you broke up for me at the very start of that. So a comparison of what data, sorry?
A comparison to what was achieved by this software and compare that to what would have happened if you didn't have it. Do you have that kind of a comparison? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I will actually show you an example of that here in just a minute.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, if that's it. So basically this is showing all of the different manufacturers we have today. This is the existing system. So these aren't looking forward. These are the data sources and methods of control that we use every day at La Plata Electric. So our meter data, all of our systems coming through our MDM system, as well as our customer management, which is all this NISC. That's where the support works and all of our customer data really lives. And a lot of this is now, we need to basically collect all of it. Right now, all of this is virtually independent. Our IT team is actually really progressive and strong, and they've developed a database for a lot of this, but it's still very high touch to manage, and it doesn't have everything, and we couldn't really automate out of it. So the play here is to collect all of this. The Camus in this case is going to develop integrations along with us for all of this data. We'll be pulling it into their system and be able to report out of it from a single interface, as we've been talking about here. Let's see. So how do we actually get this thing implemented? And this is going to be a series of integrations, basically, that our IT team is supporting. We're going to be working with different teams across the company. One of the real big benefits of software as a service is we're also not the ones driving these integrations. They have a roadmap that's being driven ahead, largely actually by Holy Cross, which is one of the good incentives to go with this company versus others, despite their having pretty much won our selection process out of about 10 different vendors that we initially looked at.
Okay, hang on a minute, Dominic. We'll go with Holly. Holly, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I wrote a note. So you're saying Holy Cross does use this, sir?
Yeah, this is the same platform that they decided to subscribe to. So I talked to their team up there. Chris Bilby is their kind of guy who does very similar to what I do here. And we speak fairly frequently. I didn't actually learn that until close to the end of our selection process, so I felt pretty good that was still objective, but it does give us a really great collaborative opportunity. They have a bigger team than we do on distributed energy resources, and they're a little bit ahead of us. I would say they're maybe a year or so, but our roadmaps are actually identical. Their EV charger program is the same, and when I look at independently with what I'd like to go after, it really lines up well, and we're collaborating with them. So I think it's an opportunity to kind of leverage and expand our resources here just through collaboration, taking advantage of 4 or 5 person team. We're also meeting monthly with them, and then we'll be meeting as a 3-way with Camus and Holy Cross to help develop the roadmap and to work together. So I'm expecting to be able to kind of amplify our resources using that relationship, hopefully.
And one other question, please, Dominic. On your last slide, the one that's real busy. Yeah, that one, please. All right, so like when you get this rolled out, that's going to simplify this slide. Is that how I understand it?
So we're still going to need all of these individual things. It's not that we're going to get rid of our outage system, which is MillSoft, or get rid of our meter data, which is Tantalus. These things are all going to be, that's how we manage our smart meters. So all these things will still exist, but instead of having to, if we wanted to put together a real-time vision of what's happening through all this, or we wanted to do something that would require all of these systems to play together real-time and nicely sync, that's where Camus will come in. Today, we would have to do a pretty complicated data project to get a snapshot of everything across the system. And it would not be real time. It wouldn't be 2-way to where we could also say, this is what we see. Now let's try to accomplish this reduction in load or X, Y, or Z, and do it throughout all of these systems without going down and having individual staff with individual expertise program and basically run that scenario for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it also helps with the 2-way information. So both going out and coming in and streamlining. Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Dominic, I don't know if you're going to get to it maybe in that, but all of these individual systems, in a sense, have their own operating system and perhaps even their own communication protocol. Is this Camus, it sounds like how you're pronouncing it, is there been a new protocol developed, kind of like SNMP was, to talk to things on the network independently, or is this thing have to know all these individual operating systems and interact with them in some way?
It has to know all of them, and that's actually one of the big value adds of a system like this. Camus, which is actually a French author. I have no idea why they picked that name, but he's the author of The Stranger and A Happy Death and some existentialist books. Anyway, but that the system there, they basically have 17 or 20 really strong developers. They're growing their team all the time. They just hired an NISC expert, which is nice to see because it's kind of a co-op specific. It's not something that big independently owned utilities are going to use, but they've hired a coder who integrates with that. They've got 17 team members from places like most recently Tesla, SpaceX, Google. A lot of their senior team does come straight out of Google's senior administration. They've got a very strong background throughout coding, and they can actually afford to have a dedicated large development staff focused just on building and maintaining these integrations because their whole system allows them to then go sell that 100 times, where our IT team could try to build it one-off, but we'd always be scrambling to maintain it as they set up new versions. But yeah, the short answer is all of these do have individually interface programs, their own protocols, and unfortunately, even a lot of the devices have their own protocols today. So on this slide, there's no real excuse for this, but there's OADR, which is the new kind of open access protocol they're trying to push out to more of these devices communicating on. But right now, they have to integrate with each of these. So Camus is writing a charge point integration that is actually live at Holy Cross. That'll be our first, and basically integrations for Nest, etc.
Okay, that's interesting, but I'm glad to hear there's at least a proposal for a standard protocol across the devices. Sometimes it takes years for those to catch on, but then when they do, it can move pretty quickly. But the interim time, you have to have some kind of crazy system that talks to all of them individually, but it really isn't the ideal architecture for the future.
No, not at all. Yeah, and the smart inverters have a California protocol that's getting adopted, but many versions of it. It's certainly a Wild West that's disadvantageous for all the consumers like us. Let's see, so, sorry. Okay, so I think the theme of this slide is really important for energy resources. Even though it's kind of a joke, but I think it represents a real risk. What I was showing before with all these manufacturers and all these disparate systems is we're really piling on resources and not really linking them up. And even as we add utility control, so if we say we add a smart resource to develop that forecasting, the operational intelligence, and really leverage what we have, beyond just simple on-off timing, managed across all the myriad interfaces, we really need these to be integrated. And I think this strategy of piling on resources without forethought is a very real danger. I think that's kind of the default flow that utilities find themselves doing, is adding devices and adding devices without necessarily doing the legwork to build this base platform, which will then allow you to take advantage of all those. And so basically, I think the failure of imagination that piling up the ladders is on can be somewhat solved by the connected systems, and they allow you to do the creative use of those resources. So you're actually linking them together to take advantage of resources that when they sit islanded, don't necessarily get to play with something else that is doing the opposite. So for example, overproduction of solar versus charging up your neighbor's Tesla battery at the opportune moment. So that's one example of that. And I think the things we really need to be looking forward to with this program is how to connecting the dots relate to beneficial electrification. How do they let us turn a resource beneficial? How can we level off peaks and fill valleys? And eventually, what does it take to create a microgrid or a virtual power plant? This is speaking to the disaggregation of loads and what you mentioned prior. These are the different slices, basically. So I don't know if you can see this very well, but the center line here, and this is dramatic, you wouldn't actually necessarily see these results. This is a little bit of an overemphasis, but you basically see these different resources. And if you're controlling, trying to level basically your load in this scenario, that center line would be what would happen if you did nothing. And these different resources would represent if you had mature programs, and I would, on the left axis, I would put this way up higher. You're not going to achieve I don't know, half your system or something like that of flux, but you're definitely going to get effective load shifting. That 10 megawatts of load I mentioned for our ETS program would be a part of this. And each of those disaggregated slivers, we can then see this is how much it's impacting our system. This is the specific amount it's benefiting us. And this is where we can leverage that resource to fill a valley or shave off a peak.
Now this, Dominic, is just an example slide. It's not our real data, but it's showing how you see the individual parts contributing to this peak demand.
Yeah, that's right. I actually had a whole bunch of other slides with real dashboards. There's probably way too much information on what it really looks like. But I think this is a really good emphasis on what it would, both what we could report and then what we're actually trying to do with it at the end is coordinate all these resources. And it wouldn't have to be that, but in this scenario, you're trying to basically level off. And this would represent to you how much you're cutting out those valleys with each of these slivers of resource, if that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, and this is the timeline. The first dashboards will go live in early Q2, and we'll be tracking against these timelines and reporting milestones as we go here. So I think that's pretty much it for me, unless there's any questions here.
Yeah, we've got one question so far. Sue, go ahead.
Thanks, Britt. Dominic, on the slide before where it showed the disaggregation, when will we be able to take a look at our actual data relative to these different categories?
So the initial dashboards are mostly going to be around telemetry, and we won't actually be seeing the shift quite as well. Probably, I would guess, Q3, we will be able to show something like the EV charger program relative to, we could show it right now, but it would not be this live real-time dashboard updating. It's fairly simple for me to show in the EV program, and we actually, how much avoided peak load we're having. However, to get it real time, I would guess around Q3 or something where we have a living dashboard continuously showing that.
Okay, and just, I guess, a question I have is on our EV program, do we have that many EV vehicles in our service territory that really impact our peak load right now?
Not huge right now by comparison, and even at full maturity, there's, assuming everybody in the county that is got vehicles, you have 30,000 on the road, it would still be smaller than some of the things power supply, but it's in terms of dollars and cents, it's not all that trivial. We have about 45 or 50 now in our program out of about 216, 220 registered electric vehicles with the DMV in our territory. Those, looking back at it when I did some analysis for Rocky Mountain Utility Exchange over the summer, they pulling a bunch of data, it looked like they're about half or 30% of the time or so they're going to charge on the evenings fairly consistently, which makes them almost certain to hit our coincidental peak with Tri-State. So if you can catch those 30% of the time, and they're charging it between 5 kW for like a Leaf and about 10, 12 for a newer Tesla, you times that times $20, and that's what I've seen kind of for our savings on avoided peak. And then pulling also we can do emissions calculations for that. So I can get into run a quick export from ChargePoint and show the exact emissions reduction based on the total fuel switching, if that makes sense.
So in our area, is our biggest peak loaders right now still residential or residential and small commercial? How would you gauge where we're at now with our greatest users during peak time?
I think I'm gonna let Dan make sure that he keeps me honest on that.
Yeah, so right now, I would say residential is what drives our peak. Since we peak between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. are the real critical peak times. That's, although commercial businesses are on that time, what pushes the peak up is the residential.
All right. So much.
Rachel, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, this is awesome and so very exciting. I know we've talked about this for a bit. So in your project timeline, it looks like, yeah, device control comes within the year. And you said that Holy Cross is about a year out. So are they already kind of playing with not just the predictive forecasting, but kind of some of this device control? And yeah, have they seen it in actions? Does it actually hold up to what it promises?
Yeah, they're controlling charge point chargers with it right now. And they're starting to plug it into their experimental microgrid. I've been in touch with their team. They have rave reviews about it. It sounds like they're having a really good experience. So.
Great. Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, Dominic. A good presentation, and it's interesting. It reminds me kind of like the Apple Home app on my phone or something like that, where you're able to control lots of different smart devices in your home. I don't know if that analogy holds up, but that's how I looked at it. So I have two questions. One is, how do you see this impacting, and when, if it does, the ability of unblocking perhaps some of the constraints around customers putting more solar on their home? I know we have some of these areas where there's capacity constraints and everything. Do you see this impacting that positively? And if you do, what's the time frame for that? Then I have one more question after that.
I think the first deliverable on that is going to be analytics from our side, so we can see more clearly what's going on. In the longer term, it's definitely going to integrated smart inverters, and the ability to control nearby resources and generate load when we need it would be the most certainly enable more renewables to go in. The short-term deliverable on that, I think, is mostly just going to be on the analytics side and show us our production meters and let us get a really clear picture of what our renewable generation is doing.
Dominic, I'll help you on that one a little bit too. The other thing that's going to add to it is the ability to manage energy storage. And once that comes along, we start seeing, let's say people can't maybe put some additional solar in now because of reverse power flow. If we have a resource that could be energy storage, it could be, let's turn these water heaters on now, let's charge up these ETS heaters. We could start to dovetail load with generation a little better, but that's probably not an expectation for 2021. That's got to be 2022, 3 kind of time frame would be my guess anyway.
Okay, that's helpful. So that it sounds like that's a positive aspect. Once familiarity with the software and platform, that we might be able to see that positive impact in 2022, 2023. That's good news, in my opinion. And something I hope that you'll work with the solar installers to gain better, what do you call it, seamless customer and perhaps seamless vendor or contractor or whatever, installer integration would also be a piece that might be a part of that, right? The other question I have is, I see this as potentially having some rate making implications, that, especially from the standpoint of maybe the Finance and Audit Committee and the board's decisions later. This will perhaps make for a more, I don't know if complicated is the right word, maybe complex rate making structure going forward. And I'm just curious if you agree with that and when you might see that kind of impact start to occur.
Yeah, probably check me on that too. I'd like to. I've got plans for it. I'd like to set us up where all our programs have basically a subscription payback based on how much load you actually turned beneficial, and leave it largely up to the member. However much electrification you turned off peak, when you're doing what we want, we actually give you reimbursement based on that instead of flat gifts or that sort of thing. So,
Tim, I think what we see going forward is not just rates, but layering programs on existing rates. So you might have a fairly vanilla rate, and then ETS may not be a separate rate. It may be a program that they can put on to whatever rate they be on, whether it be commercial, residential, time of use. It could be a variety of things. You know, you do this behavior, you get this reward, is what we're hoping to be able to map that to. But, you know, timing on that, it's hard to say. We have to, there's a lot of interconnection of devices and control to put out there, but that Stepus Connect is certainly, and the EV chargers, you know, getting those connected are the first good step for that.
I would just ask that, I mean, I see an impact on maybe rate isn't the right word, but on customers and how they pay and get, it impacts these people who participate. It will impact them financially and us. And so I just would encourage that we begin our own education around how that might look. Maybe it's something we don't end up implementing, but or implement differently or whatever. But I think it would be useful as you learn through this to also inform us about why you see that impacting income and expense going forward. So thanks. It's exciting.
All right, Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Dominic. Talk to me about adoption issues. Do you see any issues of not having enough people say, oh yeah, put me in this program, I've got this stuff, yeah, you can control it?
Yeah, so there's two sides of that. There's the initial adoption of capturing people, either when they got the device or identifying them and then going out and capturing them. That's one of the actual things we're going to do with this early. They can integrate data like Eagle Web data and whatnot. So I'm hoping to go in and say, we know all these people don't have natural gas. We know they're not on electric heat based on their load profile. Therefore, they have propane. And I can go make the targeted easy sells, like get a hybrid water heater. You basically get it virtually for free with all the rebates, and it'll pay back in a year and a half kind of thing. So those are some of the ways to promote initial adoption. And then to get people to stay on, it's one of the reasons IoT devices are not ideal, the Internet of Things. They have to be on their Wi-Fi. And if it falls off their Wi-Fi, they're less reliable than if I could control something via like our mesh network or a cellular network. And in those cases, I really like that monthly subscription type deal because you can basically give them direct skin in the game to stay connected. So right now we can do that kind of through prompting people in some other ways, but I think that's the ideal scenario.
As a board, may I think we need to be mindful that there was a fight when we started putting in AMI 10 years ago, 8 years ago, about the people losing control. So there's a message here that this is, you bring yourself into this, and it's really great if you do bring yourself into this, that we're not being big brother on that. And I think that's going to have to be a message that gets repeated again and again, because it is a concern for folks. Thank you.
Yes, correct. Part of that, I will be interesting to see how that adoption goes forward. But part of the fight about losing control had to do, of course, with their fear of the radiation and the smart meters. They were stretching to find other reasons not to like it. Hopefully, those who have no problem with the smart meters will be more easily to convince, but it is a good warning, Kirsten, to consider that ahead of time. Holly, go ahead.
I'd just like to reiterate that point of Kirsten's and Tim's, because that's one of the notes that I had on that nice little nifty slide that Dominic has with the 5 circles around LPEA. I have 2 notes on that slide regarding it's going to take a robust cooperative principle number 5, maybe dusting off some of those videos that Dan did, those lovely videos, and bring them back out into the forefront once again. So my next question is, I was super excited when I saw that this was coming out, this DER platform, when we budgeted for it, and I was really excited to see it come out. So thanks, Dominic, for the presentation. Quite honestly, I thought it was going to be Dan doing it, and it was a pleasant surprise to have you here. So thank you. I miss talking to you every once in a while when we were at the board meetings, so it's been far too long. So Dan has been doing an excellent job over the course of the 19 months or so that I've been on this board, kind of setting us up for this day. This is a piece of the utility of the future. And another big aspect of the utility of the future is also some more fiber network build out, at least to the very key pieces at the very minimum. And he's been talking about that several times along the way. So in the meantime, I have also been learning about broadband, and I did not know much about broadband when I made the committee in October, and I sat down and I read every single resource on our Google Drive about broadband to be able to kind of have a good, decent understanding, I'll say, because it's a big old can of worms too. But when I came away from that, it seemed to me that the gold standard would be fiber. And I'm not saying that I'm pushing that right now, but it's the gold standard to be able to streamline the communications in broadband. And like I said, it's the gold standard, I believe, in order to be able to build that system out. But it's interesting to me that it's not mutually exclusive with the utility of the future. So when you look at the really, really super high level estimates on buyout numbers or broadband build out, they're pretty similar, right? They're both pretty good sized ballparks. And, if you tried to pursue them separately, then it would be way out of range. But if you think about it as a full system, when we can, look at how we can continue to advance as the utility of the future and be able to develop our distributed energy resources, broadband capacity is kind of a happy go along with that as well. So I'm just kind of curious if there's been any kind of discussion or thought about how, or if there could be some way to craft a solution to become the utility of the future while we also meet our tri-state contractual obligations. I know that's a big whopper question. So
yeah, that's tricky. Anybody have any response to that? Please go ahead.
I'll just say this whole package. This isn't the last time you're going to see this. We're going to be coming back to you as we hit major milestones and bringing more information. The great thing about this is that we probably don't even know half the things that we are still going to be able to do with this in the future. It's going to tie into several different arenas. But to answer your question directly, Holly, what we're after is being agile. And this is one of those devices that allows us to be agile and respond to whatever path we take forward in the future. And whether we have fiber to the home, whether we're still using the customer's Wi-Fi, whether we're an independent power source, whether we're still with tri-state, all these things, this is going to be a useful tool for that no matter what. And we're going to adapt and fit into what we need to do.
Okay, I think that's a pretty good answer. I like that word agile is a good one, and particularly not a word that you may have thought of with utilities in the past, but it's nice that we're thinking of the future. One other comment I'll have, and then it looks like we might be done with questions. I know we've struggled with rooftop solar and how we would deal with that now and into the future. But one of the things that we're hoping for is that at some point, rooftop solar would become a controllable or at least an asset on our grid rather than a cost on our grid. We took one small step toward that with our peak power charge, and this looks like another step toward that. I know there's plenty of work to do, but it seems like we're going in a real good direction to make that what we were hoping would come true eventually. So I appreciate the work. Okay, looks like there's no more questions on this. We can, I believe, go on to the next item on the agenda then. And that would be the Finance and Audit Committee update. I have that on page 136, if you want to jump over there. And Tim, if you would, please address that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I was up next. So let me just find my spot here.
Yeah, page 136 of the full board packet.
All right. All right, 136. All right. I'm on a different one, so hang on for a second. I apologize that I'm surprised by this. All right, so here we are. I've got the Finance and Audit Committee meeting report. First, I'll ask if anyone has any questions on that, or hopefully everybody had a chance to read it. As a result of our discussion in the executive session, we did make a recommendation we're bringing back to the board, which is that Finance and Audit Committee recommends that the board rescind the motion that we passed in the December 2020 board meeting regarding the Tri-State open season application. So I would make a motion that we rescind that that December 2020 motion that was passed that directed staff to pursue a application for a MARS option at its maximum on the open season, Tri-State open season application. So the motion,
All right,
we rescind that motion, essentially.
We have a motion, and after we get a second, if we do, then we can have discussion on this. Any who need further explanation of that can receive it. So there's a motion on the floor to rescind the action the board took in the December 2020 board meeting regarding the Tri-State open season application. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that, Britt.
All right, so the motion is made by Tim and seconded by Bob. Now we can open that for discussion, so those who would like to get more information on this can. Is there any discussion at this time? Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more detail. If your thought is it to get out of Mars and get into Max, or is it just to completely get out of the open season completely? I'm kind of a little lost.
Yeah, and Dan is the one who talked to us with some more details about this in the finance, so I will ask him also to address it. But in general, we thought we had a very short time frame, so needed to make a decision, and we did. Now that we've got more time and can look at these things more deeply, we don't wish to constrain staff in any particular way right now. And I would say there's still a general interest in that program, but there's now 90 days, a lot can change. That's a big part of this. There are other parts as well. Dan, if you would go ahead.
And Kohler, there is still an underlying resolution that was passed in November that's allowed staff to pursue partial requirements that still stands. This was just a motion that was constraining it to only be Mars. We found out in the last month through our research that there may be opportunities with Max as well. So we're just evaluating different things and just trying to leave the door open on what that might look like.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments or discussion on this motion to rescind the December 2020 board action on the open season?
Hey, Britt, it's Joe. Just the 90 days. So where are we out to with that then? And like when would we have to make some kind of a firm decision on that? Is that?
Yeah, my understanding, Joe, is that they can't even start the next 90 days until FERC has given them authorization and a calendar. And I believe that's like the 10th of February, roughly that time. So that would be February, March, April. So it's like May when this season would go open. So, and if there's any other decisions to be made, you know, I'm sure staff will be keeping us up on their research on this. It would probably be on the time frame of either the month before May kind of time frame. Dan, is that calendar time frame and the decision point on that roughly?
Yeah, we're expecting mid-May for the application period, and then it'll probably be early June by the time allocations would be made.
All right. Any other discussion on this? Rachel, go ahead.
So just to clarify, we did not actually get an application in.
No, the Tri-State, either working with FERC or commanded by FERC, I don't really know, let us know that that had been postponed at least 3 months. And they have to have a 90-day time frame before something like this can go in effect after a given date. And that's what will start. That clock will start roughly the second week of February.
Yeah, I saw all the FERC updates. I just thinking of our timeline, I thought we already had to have had one submitted and all of our fees due and everything. But it sounds like
it was close.
Okay, cool.
No, so Rachel, FERC is their regulator, and they said, Tri-State, you're too premature on this. You must stop. You shall stop. And you cannot accept applications. And this is your new timeline. So that's what happened. So FERC is mandating the new timeline.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, Holly, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. When I read that FERC update, I was curious if the solar gardens were also approved yet.
I haven't heard anything on that. Have you, Jessica?
No, it has not been approved yet, Holly. It's a good question.
Okay. Rachel, anything else?
One other thing on the FERC rabbit hole, because I noticed it was application period subject to refund. And so just to understand the FERC land, they might approve the process, but the rate side of this is something separate still. Is that correct? There was like the contract buyout, something methodology.
Yeah, I think so. Has anybody got any more response to that?
Graham has his hand up. I'll let him go.
I missed that. I don't see it still. Graham,
I put my physical hand up for just a second. Yeah, I mean, the idea of the partial requirements contract, once you actually have an allocation and get into that, does have to go through a FERC reapproval, as that partial requirements contract is currently drafted. It anticipates that that the cooperative that becomes a partial requirements member will comply and basically play along with the FERC application as it sort of gets resubmitted. But that is whoever gets awarded a partial contract will have to go through FERC to have that partial contract approved. Does that answer your question?
Not directly, but that was really helpful information. I think I was just trying to remember we had some sort of mediated, I can't remember the terms, the mediated conference thing that was happening in FERC that was about rate cases.
Are you talking about the settlement?
Settlement hearing.
So there's, yeah, and Matt Larson is actually going to go into detail on those two settlement hearings, because there's a lot of good progress happening, and there's two things going on at FERC right now. So I would just ask, if you don't mind, to defer that to Matt when he gets on at 1 o'clock.
Rachel, this is Tim. I think your question also had something to do with about refund, subject to refund. And essentially we would be paying a buy down payment to Tri-State to acquire our partial power requirements. And I believe that is the area that's subject to refund. Once it's all figured out and everything, there's a possibility that that was an overcharge. That also relates to an exit fee calculation that they filed and how that might work out. So so it's just sort of an insurance that if we pay that and so forth, and later Tri-State is told by the FERC that it should be lower, they would need to refund us that difference.
Thanks, Tim. I think that was actually what I was trying to get at, because I knew that they're different. They're different cases and they impact each other. Thank you.
I can read your mind.
Caller, go ahead.
So if I understand this correct, we really don't have any choice. We have to rescind it because there's nothing to send it into. Is that correct?
A choice in what color? I didn't follow the question, so then we'll get an answer. Go ahead again.
Well, since the open season isn't open anymore, for better words,
Correct.
been stalled, we really don't have any choice but to back off, right?
That is correct. There's nothing that we can do until that open season is open again and we can submit a proposal for it. So we're in a sense biding time. It gives us time for some other research. And of course, there's plenty of other things staff is working on, but this will continue to be something that they deal with.
So the way I see it, there's no downside. Because once we figure out more stuff and they have another open season, we can again reinstate whatever we want to go forward with.
The only downside is that which has been occurring for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, and that's continuous delay.
Yeah.
We will see in 3 months if it gets delayed again or if things go forward.
Well, I can tell you from the discussions at Tri-State is that they really didn't want it to be stalled. What I heard, they wanted it to go through that distance.
Kohler, I was having trouble hearing you because of that bit of bandwidth issues. You said Tri-State really didn't want this to be which?
Stalled. They wanted
Stalled.
to go ahead and go with it.
They were ready to, Tri-State was ready to go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's on Finance and Audit Committee. We've
Still
got
a
a
motion
motion
on
on
the
the floor and it's been seconded and there's
Britt?
been discussion. So at this point, I would like to see if we're ready to go to a vote. Is there any other questions or comments? All those who are in favor of this motion to rescind the December 2020 board action regarding the Tri-State open season, this is a motion to rescind. Please say aye. Unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any who are opposed, please unmute and let me know. And any abstentions? All right, that motion to rescind is passed unanimously. Tim, was there anything else at the Finance and Audit Committee you wish to bring up?
No, it's in the report, but if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Kirsten, next we will be going on to the Broadband Committee update. That is on page 130. And it's interesting that both of our public comments this morning had to do with fiber to the premises. It's interesting how these different things sort of come together at times. So Kirsten, if you would go ahead.
Yes, super. So we did have some member communications via email earlier this month about fiber to the home, and I have cataloged those in our Google Drive. And those were from Nancy and from Deborah, who were also speaking at the beginning of this meeting. So I really appreciate their participation. Also, a petition was started encouraging broadband involvement, and that has not too many signatures on it yet, but it is growing. We have settled on what we're calling a stake in the ground, which basically is we think we need to go forward. We don't have the details on the best way to do that. I had promised more information available before the Wednesday board meeting, and since most of my deadlines get passed, I thought I wouldn't want to break my chain and be on time for this one. So I did not have that. I have a draft out to the Broadband Committee, and I've asked for some feedback from them. I do want to give a heads up, and I'd like to maybe understand if there's something that we can do now, because I'm trying not to wait another month, that we're going to be asking for a feasibility study, that we need some help in figuring out just how bad is the problem, just how much adoption might we have from our members, and how much would it cost us, what are our options to do it, and what's the best way to do it. HR Green a couple years ago bid about $70,000 to do that kind of project. There's lots of other vendors in the marketplace who could do something like that. I'm going to be coming back. I don't know where in the bloody budget this is. I don't know what we can move around or not. I'm not ready for a motion at this moment, but I believe I want to put everybody on notice that we're sort of in this pattern on the Broadband Committee of, yeah, we know there's a need, yeah, we need to do something, and then we're we're stuck because we don't have the enough information to say, and this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, and this is how much we think it's going to cost. So if it's okay, I'll just leave it as we're going to be asking for money. I think we could probably this month, depending upon, and Jessica, I'm surprising you with this here, would this be a month that we could at least look at some vendors who could do that, get some price tags, and then be able to come back and say next month, yes, this is where we would do it. I know that bandwidth is a real issue, not only broadband bandwidth, but also staff bandwidth is a real issue right now. So I don't want to be stealing bandwidth that you have planned elsewhere.
So Kirsten, thank you for asking. I did connect up with Dan about this after the last broadband committee. So I've already had a couple meetings with Teresa at the Colorado Broadband office. I just thought that she was a good person to contact because she has her pulse on all the electric co-ops and the munis in our state doing the same thing. And so she has given me some names, and Dan and I already had a call with one of the vendors that she suggested just to get some sense from them. So I think we can actually probably bring maybe 3 proposals of vendors with pricing to the next board meeting, or at least to the next broadband committee meeting, whatever you prefer, but we can be ready with that.
Super. Well, if we could bring it to the broadband committee, and then usually that's just a couple days before the finance and audit committee so that they can have a swing at it. And then we could bring it to the board as a whole. That would be great. So especially for those of us who are budget hawks more than others, I want you to really kind of think through, is this important? What we have determined is this is a critical issue to our members. What we have not determined is exactly what our role in it is. We know that it's important. We know that it involves economic development. We know it involves just day-to-day living, especially during this COVID time. It's your ability to go to school. It's your ability to go to work. So those are determinants. But how much can we afford to, and how much do we need to involve ourselves in this, and what alliances can we make? So I think we need to answer that question. I'm going to be asking for money. I don't want anybody to act alarmed next month when I ask for money. We can be alarmed at the price tag, perhaps, but not about the fact that that request is coming. So any questions on that before I go to the rest of the broadband report? Yes, sir.
Kirsten, I've got a question for you, and then I will start getting people who have their hands up. 2 questions. One is, will you perhaps be able to talk with Carl to look at where in the budget, how this would show up? What would be the line item? How specifics? It did appear with Carl's report that, we're doing okay because they've cut so much money, but we know they've got to spend some more. So if you could get specific about how it would fit in, that would be helpful. My other specific question is, one of the attendees brought up this morning that there may be some benefit in actually putting a package together with other co-ops. Now, I'd never thought of that. You always think of, your own window, your own territory. Certainly this has come up with power supply, that perhaps working with other co-ops, you could join on some big power project. I never thought about that with broadband. Do you know anything about that? And is there any work to be done toward that?
Well, yes, sir. And one of the reasons this is coming up right now actually touches on my next point here, which is about the FCC funding auction. That was the reverse auction where people were able to bid out there and say, I can name that tune in X amount of dollars. So the name of it was a Rural Electric Cooperative Consortium, which does not include any Colorado co-ops, but that consortium sorry, dear. Yes,
sorry,
Jessica.
Kirsten, I apologize, but I do know Yampa Valley is a member, and so is DMEA. So, so I have had this conversation with other co-ops in Colorado because the member asked, and the co-ops in Colorado are not interested in forming their own consortium because this one that you mentioned, Kirsten, is already very robust and active. And the reason why many of the Colorado co-ops, well, at least 2 of them now have joined, is because they have the most ability to win these auctions at the FCC. So I just found that out yesterday.
Okay, super. So I might have been looking at it. There's 4 different consortiums nationwide. And I didn't think there were any Colorado ones in this one, but you're saying there are, and I'm fine to take that
Did
correction.
they recently join, or had they been with it for a while? Do you know, Jessica?
You know, that is a really good question. They can't tell too many details right now until after January 29th. That's the magic date where then I can actually go to DMEA and Yampa Valley and say, okay, tell me all the details. But they couldn't even tell me they were members until I was sent the formal application, the only part that was public. And I went through the list of people that were members, and I found DMEA listed twice under 2 different names, and Yampa Valley. And so it may be brand new. And this is the consortium that won the auction in Colorado.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And won the auction in our area. There is a presentation. It's in the Broadband Committee subfolder. So under, and I'll send an email about that location. And it's under the fast track reports that are underneath the Broadband Committee. And it does talk about the results of that auction. It is fascinating. So there is money that was won in a reverse auction for our community. We didn't win it, but a group of co-ops did. This is where, when Jessica's saying, well, we can't really do anything until January 29th, until the long form is completed and we really know what the heck is going on, we don't know what kind of play we can have in this. So part of that feasibility thing is also, okay, what is the impact of that FCC auction, and does it strengthen our play? Does it weaken our play? Does it make us take a back seat?
Okay. Tim, you're up next. Go ahead.
Sorry, did you?
Tim?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to hear you. Couple of points. One, when we set up the broadband committee, it was set up with a budget of $15,000 for utilization for outside consultants or help. So, unless you're asking for more than that, Kirsten, just be aware that that was approved at the time that this committee was set up, which was over a year ago. So I just want to remind us of that. The other piece is, this consortium that you're talking about, the DMEA and or Yampa or any Colorado co-op was not in the 2015 list of participants when they originally got, I forget, $240 million or something out of a different pool of money. So I assume on that basis that they are new to this consortium, which kind of indicates that maybe we could have participated in it. But I would point out that this illustrates, in my mind, where we have been behind and why we need to come up with a strategic goal and plan around broadband as a co-op in Southwest Colorado. We are missing potential opportunities because we don't know where we're going. It's really important that we get this correct. If we decide that we don't want to do anything and that we have no real strategic goal other than our own internal use, then maybe it's not a missed opportunity. But beyond that, if we do anything beyond that, we are potentially missing opportunities. And I think this is really illustrative of why it has been so important for us to have addressed this issue sooner than later, and why it is still important to do so. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. So that's it for my report. I'd like to hear, does anybody else from the Broadband Committee have anything to add, anything I missed? Are we good? All right, that's it from me, Britt, unless you have any more questions.
I don't. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, the next thing that's going to be on the agenda is the board retreat update. On page 140, which is right at the end of our board packet, there is 2 pages that Rachel has provided. So if you could jump to those, if you haven't seen them yet, they're provided pretty recently. And with that, I will turn this over to Rachel. So Rachel, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, and a quick note,
I can't get my board packet to refresh, so I can't actually see those documents, but there is a mathematical error in there. I was typing on the fly, but just update from the retreat crew. So since we last talked about this, we've been kind of out there talking to different facilitators with the kind of proposed scope of work we talked about in November, which included a three-part series of things. First and foremost, it was kind of a gathering of sorts to talk about board culture, norms, etc. Second was kind of a deeper dive back into our strategic plan. And then third was kind of an evaluation process. So we talked to a bunch of facilitators, got a few proposals back. Committee looked at that and had a bit of a gut check, and feeling like perhaps we bit off what we wanted to do was bigger than what we had necessarily the time to do. And perhaps we could concentrate our efforts a little bit more and be more focused. So based on that, we were finally able to get busy people together yesterday morning to I think, tackle that question of how could this be more refined. And what we came back with was, really given where we're at and what's pressing in our work, to convene one time in more of a conversational, discussion oriented, facilitated session that's looking at this big question of power supply, and using that opportunity to, I think, not just have like, oh, what's our board charter, but to really use that conversation to put in practice some of our norms and the way we want to interact, and learn some tools for how to move through big decisions. And so that would be one piece. For more of the board team building norms, etc. The discussion we had in our brief meeting yesterday was to perhaps bump that back to the fall after this next round of elections, and also hopefully when we could gather together in person, because that seemed like a critical piece of a really essential tool for building board culture and norms. And this we didn't have time to get to yesterday, so I just kicked it in the report. I still think it's invaluable to do a board evaluation, and so I would propose that we maintain that part of the original proposal and still maintain our facilitator to do that, because otherwise it's a really awkward spot for either a board member or a staff person to be in. The next thing on this is a bit of a rough agenda, or rough budget, excuse me. We got some proposals from facilitators, again, for that larger scope of work initially. So this is just taken from some of what they quoted us out there. This is not an exact quote, but I think this will get the job done, and includes our per diems as well as facilitator time. And just to kind of, they're not charging $2,600 for a one-day meeting. It's all the back end work that goes into that, especially kind of some of the content knowledge required to facilitate a conversation around power supply. Yeah, and so I think where we are at, it's been really unclear if we needed approval for a budget or not. And so just bringing forward some numbers, and also bringing forward a revised scope of work. And I guess I would request clarity on how we move forward, if we need a formal approval, a vote. Yeah, and so that'd be my question. But before we get there, I just ask Tim or John if they have anything additional they want to add about kind of the evolution of this proposal.
Tim showed thumbs up, I guess, in agreement with what you said. John, was there anything you have? He said he's in agreement with what you said and doesn't have anything more to add. All right, then, Rachel, one question that you're asking is about the funds for this. Now, one place, of course, that we have funds already allocated is for the general board budget for the year, which there's always training in there. And since we have been so blocked from so many things, I suspect we're quite a bit low in that. I think in the board packet this month is stuff on where we're at on that. I don't know what page. So that would be one thing we could do, is just say, well, we've got plenty of money aside. We haven't been able to do individual training. Let's spend some of that. The other would be to ask for a motion to approve another pile of money to cover this 5,700. So I'm going to ask Carl to weigh in on this, and then we'll see if we can figure out what to do next. So Carl, go ahead.
Thanks, Britt. Well, it's worth noting, and you are correct, Britt, that very little of the funds that were allocated in 2020 were used, but we don't have a kind of rollover mechanism. So we're looking at the 2021 budget now. There is a total of around $60,000 for what we would call discretionary training and education, but that's for all of you guys. So that would be kind of the pot that you're working with, because the specific items, if we refer not only to what Rachel was just talking about, but also what Kirsten was talking about with the feasibility study, there isn't a specific budget item for those. So if you wanted something specific, then we would have to look at taking it from elsewhere. And I believe that would, I don't know the rules and regs, and maybe Graham would have to pipe in there, but I think that would be a budget amendment.
Yeah, and it does sound like we're likely going to be in pretty good shape, and we're probably not going to have much expensive travel and training for the next several months at least. Hopefully, maybe by next fall, we'll be able to do that again, so there may be room in here. In which case, we could punt the question if we need more money in the future to look at how we would go about authorizing that. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just to Carl's point, to give some perspective, because I did look at our training budget from last year for the board, and we had less, at least if I'm hearing Carl correctly, we only had 48,000 last year budgeted compared to 60,000 he mentioned for this year. And in total, we spent $8,000 of that last year. So we didn't even come near to our budget due to, I think, the fact that we're all grounded. So it does, I agree with what you just proposed, Britt. This is the easiest way, and if the board is okay with it, it's not a ton of money, and it'd be great to just move forward and know we'll be judicious with spending.
All right, well, I'm gonna then ask anybody who disagrees with giving Rachel the authority to go ahead and spend that based on our existing travel budget, please let me know. Otherwise, we've got the money in our budget and we should do this. Anybody who would like to comment on this or try and change our mind, please unmute and go ahead now. Okay, Rachel, you have our approval to use our budgeted funds for this. If it gets 3 or 4 times this amount of money, or maybe even 115% of this, let us know. Otherwise, go ahead. Thank you so much. Okay, it's 11:58. We can go on for a little bit. We finished the board retreat update, and now we're getting down to the item where we need to appoint a delegate and an alternate to the NRECA annual meeting. Does anybody know if there's a page number in the board packet that has this? I hadn't gotten through the searching thing. Page 8.
Yeah. I think it's 8 and then 20 and 21.
And then Brett, we also, just to let you know, unless I missed it, but we skipped the ESC nominations.
Yeah, that was removed from the agenda by part of our motion this morning because there was nothing there.
That's right. Sorry about that. You're right.
Okay, good. So on page 8 and then on page 20 and 21, there's some more on this. So page 8 is the form that we fill out. And it says before February 12th. So that's Western, members of Western United. My page 8 is Western United. This is NRECA meeting. Oh, and Western United. So there's 3 of them. Got it.
Yes. Yes, I'll, Brett, if you don't mind, yes, this is sort of a reviewing our January meetings for the last several years. This is something that we typically take care of just procedurally at our January board meeting, because these annual meetings start happening in February and March. And so even though if you look at some of these meetings might not occur until March. Oh, it just has sort of been a pattern and practice of the board to fill these delegates at this point, just all three simultaneously.
Okay, if we can do that, we can sure try. Now, quite likely, if they're just in the next few months, they will be done remotely. Often in the past, they have involved some travel, and we've most often delegated somebody to it. So I think first off, we'd be looking at somebody who would volunteer for one or more of these, and we'll see if we can get 3 names to go forward with the motion. Holly, go ahead.
I just wanted to let everybody know that according to my calendar, the NRECA annual is on March 4th. The CREA is, I have on mine the March 6th through the 8th. And then on March 9th is the Western United annual meeting.
March 9th, okay. And Holly, you're West United rep, is that, or is that somebody else?
That's me, sir.
Okay, and is that something that you would do, or would you like somebody else
Yeah,
to do the West United part?
I'll go to them.
So you could do the West United. Okay, Tim, your hand's up, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that maybe for for Western United and for CREA, we could ask the person who is also a delegate to maybe, or excuse me, our representative to also be our delegate. That might make it very simple, and then I'm not sure about NRECA. I don't think maybe Sue was the one previously, I think. I don't remember if she's willing. Then we would be able to move quickly on this. But
Okay, good suggestion. Our CRA rep is Kirsten, is it? And Kirsten?
Holly.
It's Holly. Well, she's
Yeah, Holly is CREA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Holly?
Yeah, that'd be me, sir. And I would go to all 3 of them if it pleases the board.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to do NRECA or any of these others? Please let me know. And we'll put a motion
Graham,
together. Graham,
what's
go
Graham
ahead.
got?
We do also need alternates. So we'll need 2 names. We need a delegate and an alternate.
Okay, let's see if we can fill in the NRECA delegate first, then we'll look at getting an alternate. Who could, and
I
Holly
would
said she
nominate
would.
Sue for NRECA.
Well, Holly said she'd do all 3. Sue, do you want to do one or be an alternate to all of them?
I would be fine being an alternate.
Great.
All right, then we've got Holly lined up to be the delegate for all of them and Sue to be the alternate. Is there anybody else who wishes to unseat them in those? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to designate Holly for the West United CRA and NRECA and Sue to the alternate for those 3 meetings.
So moved.
Also move.
Okay, I got Rachel made that motion, and a second would be?
Tim.
Tim's got a second, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of this motion to make them the delegate and alternate, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passed unanimously. We've got our delegates and alternate for that. Now it's 12:04, proposed resolution. If we were to take a break now, let's try that and come back at 12:35 and get started again. That's when I'll look to get us all started. Okay, at this moment then, I am calling a break. It's advisable for some of us who don't remember to, when you go on break, to turn your microphone
Anybody out there?
I am out here.
I'm here, buddy.
Is there
I'm here.
anybody out there?
Is that
Hello.
Is that
I just wondering, I still got the lunch break screen up. There we go.
It looks like people are coming back online. Is anybody able to hear me? Okay, thank you. Hillary, you're back online. Okay, we're still missing 3 directors. I get a couple more, we'll get started again. Sue, Tim, John, if you're out there, let's go. Okay, we got Sue, one more. There's John. Okay,
But I'm good.
we have got almost everybody back. Is Rachel out there? Rachel, don't see Rachel, so a couple missing.
Oh, Rachel's there. She's just connecting to audio.
Ah, I see her now. Rachel, while we're waiting to get started, you mentioned that you'll actually be getting a COVID vaccination, your second one this afternoon. I would like you to tell us your experience and how it is in the queue that you're there.
Yeah, so experience, very grateful, very fortunate. It really does make your arm hurt a lot. You get kind of sick. I got sick the first day. And how I am here is quite the anomaly. I ski patrol at Telluride, which is in San Miguel County. And so they put all their first responders in queue, the 1A queue. And so they called me to say, hey, you're working up here, thus we need you to do this. And I told them, hey, you really should give this to someone else. So they moved me to the bottom of the list, and they had so many people turn it down that I got a call back.
Okay. And your second shot will be today. All right. Not that I look forward to get shot in the arm, but I look forward to doing whatever I can in my part to put this behind us. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get the meeting started again. The next item on the agenda is on page 62. Let me jump over to 62 so I can see on my note. It's a resolution. This resolution is to give our CEO the legal ability to join and not join various organizations. Join, I guess. Pretty simple. So without going any further, I'm looking for a motion to propose resolution to approve resolution 2020-01, CEO authorization to renew memberships.
So moved by
Dan Huntington
Kohler's
moves to
moved
approve.
it, and Dan Huntington's got the second. Is that okay? All right. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? All those who are in favor of resolution 2021-01, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or any abstainers? All right. Resolution 2021-01 has passed unanimously. The next item on the agenda would be to do with our travel and training requests. And then after that, Tim will be up to go over our director expense approval. Do any directors have any travel or training requests? If so, please unmute and speak up.
John Lee, I have a CREA orientation on the 9th of February, and then the 2630.1 and 2640.1 courses in February and March.
All right, John Lee for some CREA training. Are there any other training requests? Or if we're starting to get to a travel, Kirsten, I think I see a hand. Does that mean you're going to go?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I have an in our ECA course 2630 and 30.1. So it's via CREA, so it's going to be free, but it will be my time.
Okay, a couple of courses for Kirsten to add to the list with John. Are there any other training requests? I am not seeing any. So let's go ahead and somebody make a motion to approve these two training requests.
I move we approve the training request listed.
Thank you, Rachel. She has moved to approve these training requests. Is there a second?
A second.
Joe Lewandowski seconds. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Kirsten, take your hand down. Unless you've got discussion. Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve these training requests, please unmute and say aye at this time.
Aye.
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 Any who
Aye.
oppose? And any abstentions? All right, the training requests are approved unanimously. Tim, if you're ready now, could you please go ahead with director expense?
All right, thank you, Britt. So we have all 12 directors here at this monthly board meeting. So that's a monthly stipend and full day per diem. We had the Finance and Audit Committee meeting last Thursday, the 14th. There were 4 directors, Director Bassett, Lynch, Skihan, and Wheeler. We all were there. Half day per diem. So that makes a total of $500. There was a roundup board meeting on the 2nd of December. Is that correct? I guess so.
28.
28, sorry. Yeah, that's one Director Lewandowski for per diem. Director Skion either wasn't there or declined. There wasn't a policy committee meeting. Apparently there were no CREA board meeting or WE board meeting claims from Director Metzler. The Broadband Committee met, which was Director Wheeler, Skion, and Metzler, half day on the 12th, I should say, of January for $375. And then there was the Board Retreat Committee. At this point, I have Director Landis, Witchell, Wheeler, all receiving per diem for $375. There's No other claims or any other expenses at this point. That's all had to do with mostly per diem, all per diem or stipend.
Okay, Rachel, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, sir. Sorry.
Okay. All right, that is the list of expenses, mostly for attending things. Is there a motion to approve those expenses, please?
So moved.
Okay, Rachel's
Second.
moved to approve the director expenses and Kirsten has seconded. Is there any further discussion of these, or has Tim missed anything you wish to alert us on? Seeing no discussion, all those who approve these director expenses this month, please unmute, say aye at this time.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let me know. And any abstentions? All right, director expenses are unanimously approved. So at 1 o'clock, we are going to break to go to Matt Larson, the lawyer. We've got a little bit of time before that, so we'll jump down to the next item on the agenda, which would be the attorney report. Graham, are you out there? If so, that's on, his report is on page 118. So I'm going to click on 118 on my little handy dandy PDF viewer. There it is. And I've got the attorney report up. So Graham, if you would point out a few highlights and then ask for questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is just a sort of a summary report of the things that I've done. I think I tried to limit it largely to things that the board was fairly directly involved in. I'm very busy on a day-to-day basis helping the staff with contract reviews and personnel and employment matters and regulatory issues and things like that. So I tried to keep this to sort of one page. I'll hit a couple of the highlights. Highlight number one is the list of local attorneys to serve as a potential alternate counsel that the board requested. That is attached to this report. I personally spoke with every attorney on that list and verified that each of them are willing to be on that list, and sort of briefly discussed my impression of what the board was expecting about those attorneys for being on that list. So they all, everyone, there's 5 names on there, and I had good conversations with all of them, and everybody has agreed to be on that. Another thing that is on there that had been Attorney Denning had been dealing with previously that sort of got handed off to me was the Pagosa Springs franchise. I was able to have good conversations with Attorney Denning about her red lines and concerns with the existing franchise, and then work with the Pagosa Springs attorney to address a lot of those issues. So we have a form that is finalized enough to where the Pagosa Springs town manager is going to take this draft to the town council for review. It is looking back over our corporate history, it seems with these franchise agreements that we wait until we get a final version from the city or town before our board passes its resolution. So this is sort of still in draft form for each of you to review and comment on if you have any questions or concerns about that. And I'd be happy to sort of take those back to Pagosa Springs. I see Director Wheeler has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm curious about, like, I mean, I just got this. I haven't had time to read through it. So, you know, I'm just curious about what the time frame is that you say, if there is any input that we have. I'm not sure what that process is. If I would hate to have this come to before the board for approval, and then we discover there's some issue and back or renegotiate or something as a board. So, can you give some idea of?
You know, they intend to at least take it for its initial reading to the town council this month. I don't, you know, that typically ordinances require a couple of readings before they're finally approved. But I don't know the exact time frame of like when those meetings are and how long that turnaround time is. I can reach out to Pagosa Springs Town Council and have their time frame of when they expect to have that to you. I could probably get that, you know, via email during this meeting and have an answer for you before we adjourn today.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good just to know if we have a desire to make any comment, what our deadline is for doing so. That would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
All right, Joe Lewandowski, go ahead.
Graham, were you finished with everything, or?
Those were sort of the two highlights I was going to hit. You know, if there are other things in the memo or in the attorney report or not on the attorney report, those are just the two main highlights that I was going to hit: the franchise ordinance and the memo.
Okay. I was kind of curious. You've been on for a few months now, and Jessica, maybe you can weigh in on this. Have you found, you know, things that you can't work on, or does it look like everything that comes, you know, through you to staff and other issues that you're comfortable with acting on those as the co-op attorney?
I haven't found anything that has given me pause. You know, so far I haven't turned anything down or referred anything out on my end. I don't know if anybody has sort of kept anything away from me.
Joe, the only thing that there was a conflict was with a tree trimmer issue that's been going on for a very long time that you guys have already seen in the memos. And Shay, that's the only issue that Shay's retained, because Graham's firm represented the other side of that issue. So that's only one conflict that we've had.
And the last time I discussed that with Shay, there was a potential three-party resolution in which my former client would already be resolved, and so Shay was probably going to be able to pass even that on to me shortly. That the conflicting party for me was going to have settled out fairly quickly, was her estimation. That was a couple weeks ago that I talked to her about that.
Okay. And Jessica, your any concerns that you have? Is this working out as the way you would like?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've gotten, Nadine will attest to this. Actually, the entire leadership team will. That it's been extremely helpful. We've gotten lots of emails and feedback from staff thanking us, because when we had to wait for a week or more to get answers on simple things like easement language, we can just go and quickly talk to Graham. So it's actually increased efficiency at the company. And in regards to member issues, we're able to resolve them within a day or two, versus before it would take us a week to 2 weeks. So we've found that it's excellent, and it reduces our risk as a company as well, because we're now able to go to an attorney and Graham can advise us on immediate issues versus, again, us doing our own lawyering or waiting for information for 2 weeks and more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Graham, I appreciate seeing the memo with a list of attorneys and something about them as we asked. I noticed one of the names on there, Jeff Kane, used to be my neighbor. Jeff and Maya were good neighbors, and he was always wonderful to talk to and was very interested in energy issues, but I see he's gone to Southwest Water and property law rather than in energy direction. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else for Graham Smith? Okay, thank you. We have a few more minutes before we bring up, before Matt comes on. If Jessica, if you see him come on, certainly interrupt me. Otherwise, we will go on to director reports. Were there any director reports provided in the board packet this month? Certainly there was from Tri-State, some stuff. So Kohler, would you start this out with saying, giving us any highlights, and then we'll go on from there. Kohler, unmute first, and then go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yes, you can look at the board highlights. It's attached in there, as well as the board meeting notes that they put in there, and mine as well. And I don't think there's a lot to really specifically highlight. One program that was given to us, and I think that Jessica might got to see it as well, it was the fire mitigation program, which was pretty impressive that they put on. It was actually, it was really interesting. Got a big favor from everybody on the board. So I would just take questions if anybody has questions.
Okay, and the Tri-State board report starts on page 38 of the board packet. And then there's a few other odds and ends that go on for a few pages related to that. Are there any questions regarding Tri-State? Holly, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Britt. All I wanted to say is that was a fairly exciting little narrative of their cybersecurity attack, if you guys read that. It was kind of interesting. And it just points out about how much more important this is continuing to be. You know, recently I was reading in the news that they foiled a plan to take down the Southeast power grid or something to that nature. So I read the article. It sounded like some youth that are just trying to buck the system, but it points to why it's really important to have a really strong IT department. And I thank you all for that.
And that one, just another note, that affected all kinds of government agencies, and it was very widespread, and it's been going on for quite some time, undetected. So it was a big deal.
Yeah, and Holly and Kohler, I would like to mention that just so that everybody knows, we don't use SolarWinds, so it did not impact us. But we will be presenting our cyber plan in the next, probably not next month, but maybe in March. Drew is working on that. So we'll do a presentation on our cyber activities and how we've protected our grid.
So do you use Orion? Because Orion is the part that Tri-State was using.
Drew would have to answer that.
Orion was the part of SolarWinds that was vulnerable to that. So no, we do not use that.
Okay, good.
Drew, has this been something that you've kind of been following since it was such a national story with foreign infiltration into such a major system?
I've been keeping up with it a little bit, not digging into too many details since it doesn't affect us. But you know, there's still certainly a lot of takeaways, you know, as far as what vendors you work with, and it's really honestly pretty surprising that a company like SolarWinds is used by so many government agencies and utilities and so forth. So.
Yeah, I think this particular infiltration, so to speak, is going to be in the news for some time. Looks like it's not near over. Okay, Tim, go ahead.
Thank you. Kohler, I saw that you mentioned a legislative review in your committee report. And I would just ask, I know that the Colorado legislature has sort of postponed for a month or something, but you know, I would be interested to know what you learn about Tri-State's concerns for any upcoming legislation, and that we get that in our reports going forward, so that we have some idea of what they are seeing and what they have as a concern. As an aside, I would also ask that of Director Metzler for CREA. I think we need to keep an eye on those and whether we agree or disagree with our incumbent provider or our trade association when it comes to Colorado legislation, at least, or if there's something in the federal level that comes along. So I just ask that that be highlighted, please.
And Tim, I'll have to check. Usually I do put that stuff in our drive. And I'll have to look and see this month. But this month there wasn't much. What they went over is the proposed cabinet that Biden would have. And didn't really talk about the legislation going forward. But I will double check, make sure those are in the drive.
You know, Kohler, something you might try, a technique is in the nice summary report you have put together, you could create a link to some of the things that you put into that drive. And then if people on the legislative review, if you've got a document over there or anything else, not every one, but those you think might be interested, that would help people dig into stuff that I know you take the time to provide over there anyway. You might try that. And if you need technical help, I'll volunteer Drew's time.
Well, thank you. I will need technical help.
Yeah,
I can do that. I have no problem doing that.
Okay, yeah, creating the links, you just highlight some words and put the link there behind it. And then even when you create a PDF from that, the link or maintain. So it is a good technique to use that. So that would be something that Drew will help you on. That'd be a good idea. Okay, Tim, anything else?
No, not really at this point. I just would mention that the roadmap for implementation of 1261 is a revised one. It was just released by the Colorado CEO and so forth. That has will have a significant impact on the tri-state mix, portfolio mix, and so forth. And I encourage everyone to review at least the executive summary of that and get a little familiar with it. It also has some things around goals, like estimations of how many electric vehicles need to be on the road by certain timeframes in order to potentially meet those targets. It's aggressive, it's significant, and while there aren't very many at the moment, perhaps by 2040, I think it's like 100% need to be out there. So those are things that will impact us and Tri-State going forward as our supplier. So.
All right, thank you. Holly, I see that you've got a question. Would you please make a note and hold that, because I see Matt Larson is actually connected to us now. The other thing that we need to all do is make sure we have the link to the executive session that we will go into with Matt nearby somewhere. So while he's discussing the part and any questions we have that are done in public, you might go out and make sure that link is available for you. Matt, good afternoon. Happy New Year.
Likewise, same to you.
This is the public session we have, and we do have one newspaper gentleman on who's done a good job of taking your information and sometimes putting it together in articles to inform our members more widely. So if you would, please give us what you can you can update us on any FERC, Colorado PUC, or even the Adams County case. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Britt, and Happy New Year to all of you. And I hope my connection's all right. And I ventured into my office, see what it looked like.
Looks good.
And make sure it was still here. And it is. So a few updates, not much at the Colorado PUC outside of, Tri-State's electric resource plan case is kind of getting started. That's going to be a long process for Tri-State. And that's really going to be a big focus, I think, at the state level for Tri-State as they move forward here, as they determine, future resource procurements. Most of the action since we last talked is in Adams County, which we can talk about a little bit, as well as at FERC. So not a huge public update today, but I can just give you a sketch of where things are. LPEA has joined in the Adams County litigation. United Power with LPEA have moved to amend the complaint that was filed. One thing that's important here is that United has several claims that they've brought forward as a part of that case. LPEA is only a party to the claims regarding the legality of the non-utility member additions. So there's other claims related to issues between Tri-State and United Power that go back to the development of some of the bylaw amendments that LPEA is not a party to. So LPEA is sort of a party to a fraction of the case. The claims are going to potentially be combined. Tri-State has not objected to the amendment to the complaint to allow for this. The non-utility members have objected to it. So that would be Mieko, Elgins, and Olson's. So the judge will be considering those arguments, but we expect, ultimately the complaint to be amended in that case to begin moving forward. And we can talk a little bit more about what that looks like in the executive session. But that's kind of the update since last time on the litigation front. So that's kind of item one. At FERC, numerous cases going on at FERC. I'm sure you guys are aware of the Board Policy 115 decision that came out that resulted in the delay of the open season. That was really related to a noticing requirement and Tri-State's interpretation of that noticing requirement, which I agree with the way that they came at it. So that does have a little bit of a lag in terms of when the open season will kick off. So that's the first one. The stated rate case, so that's essentially Tri-State's rate case, is in settlement discussions right now. Not really a lot I can say on that, but there is another technical conference in that rate case tomorrow amongst the parties, and they're looking at different approaches to Tri-State's revenue requirement and the rates that are ultimately paid by LPEA and other distribution cooperative members. And then the contract termination payment case remains in a settlement posture. The next big deadline is that counteroffer is due from interveners at the end of the month. So on January 29th, can give you an update on where that stands. But, LPEA staff has been very engaged in that process. And, we continue to be really active at FERC. And I think those cases are really picking up some steam. And as we head through the remainder of the first quarter and into Q2, I would imagine that those remain a big focus along with Adams County. Both of those processes move a little bit, in terms of state district court litigation, and the FERC process moves slower than state regulatory. So, the updates aren't quite as rich on a monthly basis as they might be in the state regulatory context. So from my perspective, those are kind of the key things that have developed since the last time we got together before the end of the year. I'm happy to take any questions, and then we can pick the rest of it up in executive session.
Are there any public questions for Matt before we look for a motion to go into executive session? Okay. We have then one reason to go into executive sessions, obviously, is to discuss with our legal counsel about these litigation matters. For our minutes, are there anything else that we're going to discuss this month in executive session that we need to summarize? For example, would we be discussing anything to do with the contract with our subsidiary or anything like that? Jessica?
No, I can't think of anything, Brett, unless Tim has any updates in that regard, but.
I can give an update if you want.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session to discuss our litigation matters and our subsidiary contract. May I have such a motion?
I so move.
Okay, I've got a motion for, I think it was Rachel that was the first in there, unless I missed. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and a second by?
I'll second this, Tim.
Tim. All right, there's a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, can you give me my status on this, please?
Okay, Kohler, you will not be available, and we will update you individually, so we won't have to jump in and out. I don't think it'll be much of an update on the other issue. of anything that doesn't have to do with Tri-State. And we will then, somebody will notify you when we come back into regular session.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor of going into executive session at this time, please unmute and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Let me know. And any abstentions? Okay, by unanimous vote, we will be going into executive session now. So please exit this session and use the link to go into the other one. Thank you. I'll see you on the other side in a few minutes. Okay, it looks as if we're starting to come back online. Is my voice being heard? Yes, okay. I see 1, 2, 3. I see Bob, myself. Is Holly out there? Don't see Holly yet. John Witchell. Don't see John yet. John Lee, yes. And Kirsten. Yep. Kohler. Yep. Rachel. Don't see Rachel yet. There's John coming in.
What time was Rachel bugging out for her shot?
Some around 3 something. So I think she's
okay.
time. Actually may finish up before she needs to leave. We're still there's Holly.
Hey, Britt, can I just mention one thing before we get started?
Oh, yeah.
Tim, I did look into the drive, and it does have under the Tri-State folder, it's called Government Relations Report. I think that's what you're looking for. It is in the drive under Tri-State.
And Kohler, do you file those by a date stamp of some kind, as I recall?
That's right. Each month it'll have a new folder. So this is under the January 21 folder for this month. So each month has its own.
All right.
And what was the name again of that?
Government Relations Report.
Government Relations Report. Thank you.
All that stuff is super helpful, Kohler. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kohler.
And for those who don't regularly look at that, we have our main top level for the board of directors, which has a bunch of folders. One of those folders is Tri-State. Within there is a folder called Board Documents. And then within there are these time-stamped folders, like 2019-01 is the oldest, and it goes up to 2021-01. So if any of you have a research project where you need to go back looking at Tri-State data of some kind for the last year or two, there's quite a lot in there. The most recent folder then is this 2021-01. And I see the second item in there, partly timestamped, is the Government Relations Report. So appreciate that color. Okay, it looks like most of us are back now. I'm not going to do a roll call to see exactly who's missing. After executive session, we're now going to start the meeting back up again. One bit of unfinished business we had was that Graham was going to see if he could get in touch with Pagosa to find out about the timeline on the Pagosa franchise agreement. So Graham, if you are out there, could you go ahead and tell us what you learned?
Yes. So as I might have alluded to earlier, passing the laws that regulate passing an ordinance like this require 2 public readings. So the first public reading is scheduled for tomorrow night. The second public reading is scheduled for February 2nd. So that is going on. It's going to be Pagosa Springs Town Council meetings. And the public is allowed to make comments at that time. One thing I would just note for the board members who have an interest in appearing at those council meetings is that we don't have a specific board action direction on this as of yet. So under our board of directors policy 122, we need to make sure that the director doesn't appear to speak on behalf of the full board. So I just want to kind of reiterate that. If you're interested in showing up to that appearance and paying attention to how the town of Pagosa Springs is handling this, I just need to make sure we're clear on what role you're appearing in. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Thank you, Graham.
Repeat those dates one more time. I didn't catch them.
So tomorrow night, the January 21st. And then February 2nd will be the second reading.
And Graham, after the second reading, then do they have any particular timelines that you're aware of before they would get it back to us? Or then it's just up to the city council of Pacosa?
It is, the ball is sort of in their court right now on that and when they get it back to us.
Okay. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, Graham, could you kind of remind me what is our role in this as far as the franchise agreement? What is the motion we'll be looking at, the action we'll take?
So the way a franchise agreement works is that it's passed by the town council as an ordinance, just like any other sort of legislation that they would pass. And then it is given over to us to sort of ratify and agree to. The way we've done that in the past is that once the ordinance has been enacted, then we pass a resolution as a board to basically agree to it. It's funny, right? If you look at it, it looks like a contract, except for it says, you know, the sort of ordinance heading stuff that most municipal ordinances have. And so it'll end up appearing and being recorded as an ordinance, but it physically looks like a contract.
But we really don't have a choice, do we? I mean, they're going to go forward with it with our approval or not. Is that correct?
Pretty much.
Thank
I do recall when we kind of worked with Durango, work being the polite word, I guess, at that time, about the franchise agreement. There was some back and forth. There was some public that demanded some things, and there was some things that LPEA wanted in there, and the language did go back and forth a time or two before it was completed. So anyhow, there's for that. Any other questions about the Pacosa franchise agreement or anything else related to Graham's report? Okay, we were on Tri-State and we were looking at questions and some discussions on Kohler's report about Tri-State, and we left it that Holly had a question that I cut her off on when we went to our executive session. I don't know if you still have that, Holly, but if you do, here's your chance.
Well, Brett, my recollection is we had rounded about to, Tim was asking that we also make sure that we pass forward any CREA legislation that's coming down the pipeline. So that's what I wanted to address, please. I did send a link to the Colorado greenhouse gas pollution roadmap that he also referred to, that Director Wheeler referred to. I hope that link works. So if it doesn't, let me know and I'll track down a better link. The legislation is not going to meet officially for legislating until mid-February for COVID concerns. From what I'm seeing right now, the big piece of legislation they're following is on wildfire and how to address challenges with mitigation issues. Governor Polis also has put in an $88 million wildfire funding request. 20 million of that is for vegetation, and that is being deemed a little bit low for that. Those were the two things for CREA. We have not had a meeting since our last board meeting. That meeting is at the end of next week. So if anybody has any issues or concerns they want me to bring up to CREA, that meeting is next Friday. So I just wanted to address that for you, Tim.
Okay, Holly, that link worked fine. It brought up a 207-page report. But as Holly had suggested, if you don't choose to read the whole report, there is an executive summary in there, and she suggested that we all at least read that. So the link that she sent does work.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Kohler, was there anything else with Tri-State that was left hanging that you wanted to point out?
I think there is one other thing I would like to point out. I'm trying to find the page right now. It's on page 42 of 141. And it's the second, as you call it, paragraph. It talks about operating reserves. And they're very tight in the region. And Maine, WAPA, DMEA, and Deseret Power have all inquired about getting reserves in Tri-State. Tri-State did mention that operating reserves are getting tighter and tighter. And this needs to be a consideration as we move forward and looking at different power sources. Is this operating reserve and spending reserves? It was very interesting because Vmware is the one that did inquire about it, not Guzman. They couldn't answer the question of why it was Vmware and not Guzman. But anyway, this is just something to keep in the back of your mind because it's going to be important. It's a concern I have as we get towards the end of the decade, as we start shutting down all this fossil fuel generation, exactly what we're going to do to replace it. And also, Colorado is looking at the Tri-State would not be able to import fossil fuel generation towards the end of the decade. So just kind of a heads up on that.
Yes, that might be an interesting opportunity for Tri-State to keep some of their big gas working, because the operating reserves can actually be a, a pretty profitable item if nobody
They're
else.
allowed to do that, yes. Right.
Yeah, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. There'll be one thing that has to do with, well, keep it for backup, but only use it when you have to. There's not a lot of kilowatt hours potentially generated from that, but it does mean that there are still some fossil fuel things existing. So that'd be interesting how that shakes out. Of course, the only answers for that are massive amounts of storage, maybe that will occur, or more hydro storage of some kind, and perhaps gravitational storage. So interesting items. Okay, any more questions for Kohler or comments on Tri-State? All right, Holly's already hit some on CREA, and I'll just now open it up to the rest of the directors to see if they have any other highlights they would like to point out on the reports that they've provided, or if there are any questions related to their typical director reports. At this time, anybody who has anything? Holly, go ahead.
I would just also like to acknowledge that I did include the Western United financials in the board packet. There has not been a board meeting since our last board meeting as well. That is also coming up the end of next week on Thursday. Okay. Western United, by the way, looks like by their financials, they're kicking some hiney. They're doing pretty well. They've been stockpiling to avoid some of the delays in manufacturing that we're still seeing due to COVID concerns. So they do have a pretty high inventory right now. However, that's really been beneficial in the long run. They had record sales in November and December.
Great, interesting. Joel Lewandowski, go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot to put in here that Brigham is now off of the Roundup board, and Naomi Dobbs, I think she's in District 4, is now the chair of the Roundup committee.
Okay.
2. Thanks, Dan.
Naomi's in 2. Okay, and now she's chair. Good. We've got Kohler up next. Kohler, go ahead.
In the Roundup information, I just wanted to throw her out again to thank John Mitchell very, very much. He has donated his, looks like his per diem to the Roundup Fund, and that is huge. So thank you, John. I think that's very much appreciated by the community.
Hear, hear.
And Kohler, I don't know whether we blame your internet connection or your headset or whatever, but I don't know, maybe between now and next month, you get a chance to play with that and see what could be improved. It would be helpful. It is tough to hear you.
So you're having a hard time hearing me? Is that the problem?
Yes, it seems kind of muffled, like you're covered up with blankets or something.
Okay, because I hear you guys fine. I'll work on that. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on direct reports? Another agenda item was any board actions resulting from the executive session. There aren't any, unless somebody has something that I missed. Sue, go ahead.
This goes back to the appendix earlier today. And it was just a note for myself that when I received my bill this month and our new bill stuffer, that 2 of the dates for meetings, upcoming meetings, had already passed. So I know that the cycle of billing is throughout the month, but I'm wondering if we can add the following month's dates as well to those newsletters. Like when I got mine, the broadband and the FAC committees had already met. So if somebody was wanting to tune into those in my area, they would have missed those meetings.
Okay, I see Hillary shaking her head. I think she got that message. Go ahead, Hillary.
Nodding my head. Yeah, no, Sue, we also
Nodding.
received that feedback from a couple of others, and it's a very valid point. So starting from the one that will be in your next bill, the section will say upcoming meetings, and it'll have for that month that is going out and also for the next month.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Now, Hillary, when bills go out, they're like going out almost every day or at least once a week, or how often do they go out?
Yeah, we have 8 separate billing cycles that go out over the month. So it starts from the first of the month, and then they continue to go out all the way until the end of the month. So in some cases, people aren't getting the February newsletter until the beginning of March. So we're trying to adjust our content so it's all still relevant, regardless of when people are receiving it.
Okay, yeah, I can see the trickiness there, but I guess you guys will figure that out. Joe Landowski, go ahead.
I wanted to just ask a question about the consultant and contractor report. Can I do that now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Polish, but that's not why I'm asking the question. Just curious.
You have a page for that, Joe?
I'm sorry. Page 37 of 141.
Okay, we can go look with you then. 37 of 141. I see it.
And this is the Alamon pole inspection service. And I just kind of curious about, is this, are poles inspected, once a year? And how many poles do we have? And how big of an expense is this, looking at putting it in perspective with everything else? Is this I look around and see a lot of poles out there. It's like, wow, these things look like they cost a lot of money. So I just want a little background on that, if I could.
Yeah, I think we'll have to get the actual numbers to you, Joe. We don't have them offhand. But it's a normal safety issue that every utility is required to inspect poles. So this is not an option. It inspects the guy wires because those are often dust. Poles are often eaten by rodents underground, so you can't see it. So it is a critical infrastructure requirement that we do have inspections. But we'll have to get those details later.
And as I recall, there's kind of a rotating inspection that goes on. So if Jessica, there's kind of some kind of rotating schedule next meeting, give us a little bit of background on that. Joe, did you have anything else?
Yeah, and then there was a legal expense for analysis group. That's not Matt's group, is it?
No, Joe, that was, I think, a invoice that got to us late. And that was the group that was doing an analysis on the buyout methodology.
Wow. So that's really late bill.
It's very late bill. It was, we weren't happy as well.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Was that the Salt Lake City group or something else?
No, that was Sue Tierney's group. Is that right, Carl? I believe that was
Yeah, that's Tierney.
Tierney. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, as part of the PUC case, money that ended up not being of use. But if things ever come back up, the research is there. Okay, anything else, Joe?
I just have one more question. I was looking at our Scott's Pro Lawn Service and some landscaping. Is that just for the main building, or is that for, planting and keeping up stuff around substations and other offices and things?
Carl, you would probably have the best handle on that.
I believe Jerry, and I don't see Jerry on, so I'll have to confirm with him because he manages that contract. But the vast majority of that is for the Durango building.
But Joe, on that point, because you're highlighting things that we've already seen as improvement areas. So we're already working with Jerry and Donnie, he's our facilities manager, to actually dryscape those, because we've also seen those costs and thought, why are we irrigating and mowing? So we are actually going to pull out a lot of the lawn and put it in more natural dryscaping so we can reduce costs on mowing and water, to your point. So yeah, we're looking at that.
Great. Great. Thank you.
All right, Dan Huntington, you're up next. Unmute Dan and go ahead.
I guess we're in the good of the order question type stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just general now because we kind of reached the bottom of the agenda. So anything that you would like, please go ahead.
Okay, I got a text from a member. It says, what is the COVID-19 rearrangement fee of $22 in the LPEA bill?
You mean, did you catch that, Jessica? Know what he's speaking of? Dan, could you repeat what you thought it said?
What is the COVID-19 derangement fee? It was $22 in their LPEA bill.
I think
$22 charge on their bill for
I
COVID-19.
think I can answer that if you'd like me to, Jessica.
Yeah.
So I believe what it likely was we set up a payment arrangement. So I believe it was I can't remember the exact month, September. We took all of our customers who had amounts in arrears and we divided that amount by 6. And then we split that out over 6 months. So say, for example, you owed $600 at that point, Dan. Instead of having you have to pay all of that back to us, we let you pay that off over time slowly. So $100 each month. So what they probably saw was that they had the 22 amount times 6 originally, and we just divided that in 6. It was a way that people could slowly pay us back what they owed and what they accrued when we weren't disconnecting anyone over time. And what you can let people know is we send out a letter to every single person that we put on this payment plan. We let them know that this is the automatic payment plan that you've been put on, payment over 6 months. But if you still can't do that and you want to extend that payment plan to a year, we can set that up for you as well. So anyone who is having issues with that amount that's on their account, they can call us and we're more than happy to further extend that out.
Okay, thank you. That explains it real well. Thank you. That's all I have.
Tim Wheeler, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm back on the consultant and contractor report. Joe asked a couple questions I had. I would just point out that Scott's Prolon service, they often have a pesticide that's a part of their spraying. So anything you can do to reduce that service and have a more natural landscape sure has my vote. I also wonder, I know that we have leases that provide us income, for example, on pole attachments, things like that, communications like towers on people's land, including directors. And I wonder where that gets reported or if we have any visibility into those kinds of things, because this seems, the scope of this report, which is very helpful, and I really appreciate it, the way it's broken out by quarter and everything, it seems to be only contractors and consultants. But what about other kinds of expenses that we might pay for, or income that we might get from non-electric service kind of thing? So, and maybe that's something we take up at the FAC or something, but I just wanted to put out that that would be information I think that would be helpful as well. So.
Is there any staff response to that, or is just?
I don't know if Carl wanted to. Oh,
sorry, we're talking over. Yeah.
Go for it, Carl. I was just going to point to you.
Yeah, I think that would be something we could tackle at FAC, Tim. Maybe take a line by line on some of those other revenue and tell you what's in each one.
Right. As well as expense, right? We
Oh yes, both
delete
categories. Yeah.
stuff and things like that too. It doesn't show up.
Sure.
Right? That would be great. Thank you, Carl. I'll put it to as well in my notes.
Sounds good.
All right. Tim, anything else?
That's it. Thank you, Brett.
All right, Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, one of my questions actually piggybacks maybe a little bit off of Dan's, but I saw in the customer service report that call volumes were up substantially. And in the top 3 complaints, one of them was high bills. And so is it a lot of, we celebrated the success of this repayment program. Is it folks starting to get those repayments and just kind of all of a sudden realizing that, wow, that actually does, it does add up? Like, or is it more rate increases and people are just finally starting to kind of see that? Any further detail on kind of the high rate complaints?
Yeah, sure. So I spoke to Aubrey about this, who's our customer service supervisor. A large reason for the call volume was that we're seeing a greater mobility amongst our members. So the most calls that we got, and the reason for more of an increase, was we just have a lot of people moving in, moving out, changing addresses. So our service orders are our #1 calls. The high bill calls are pretty standard for this time of year. When the temperatures go down, those calls go up. And I asked her if she felt like we had seen an increase from last year. And she said it's pretty on par with what we usually get. The reason you're seeing that call increase is just because people are moving like crazy for some reason right now. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Hallie, go ahead.
Great, thanks. I guess I'll add my comment since some of the pages in our packet weren't fully covered, specifically the executive report. I was fortunate to find that link to the Auld Lang Syne by the executive staff. So I guess kudos are in order. I did listen to it. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I discovered something new. I was quite excited. Also, I would like to just put out a gigantic kudos to you all for it's been stated to me that our code of excellence is a beacon of light to others, and I just wanted to acknowledge your work in helping Grant Public Utility District form their own code of excellence. So thank you and congratulations.
Thanks for seeing that, Holly. And that'll be on one of our future dashboards, because we actually had a second utility contact us to help them with building a code of excellence. And I actually got a call from IBW's Colorado lead just yesterday, thanking us as well for showing other utilities how unions and management can break that divide and work more collaboratively. So it's been a really positive experience.
Okay, we have reached the end of the agenda. We've had some general comments and questions. So let's see if there's any more. If there's anything in the packet that you'd like to question or any comments that you might have, let's have those. If not, it looks like we will be able to have a shorter meeting, or make actually probably a record-breaking short meeting. Anything
Yeah, I would
else?
just say that's a great way to start the new year, Brett. Thanks.
Here, I see lots of thumbs up and smiles. So I guess there's lots of agreement with that.
I would declare it certainly as a record in the time I've been around. So good all the way around.
Yeah, actually it is for me. The only meeting that was ever shorter is coincidentally one that occurred when a vice presidential candidate, Pence, was visiting Durango. And it happened to fall on a day. And so the meeting was just cut at noon, bam. So people could go to that if they chose. I noticed this morning, I kind of felt I was sort of doing the same kind of thing, but it was at least said we were able to do it online. I didn't have to drive somewhere. So I appreciate people allowing that to occur. Anything else that we've got? Questions or comments? Okay, then I will now declare this meeting officially adjourned. And we will see you in committees and see you next month.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
everybody be safe. Bye-bye.
Incredible. All right, bye.
Thank you.